She's Steve Carell now. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the Screenplay Archaeology podcast. And that's interesting. Episode 31 recorded in October. That's bizarre. But no, I'm your host, KiramidHead.
And I'm a guest, I suppose.
Warren
Belinsky.
Yes, and we decided, I did not think this would actually work, just randomly tweeting out, going like, hey, anyone want to co-host? And it worked.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd get a response, if I'm honest. I thought, all right, he'll get one of his friends.
Well, I took forever to respond just because I have two Twitter accounts, and that's the one I'm always signed out of. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a Screenplay Archaeology Twitter account. But yeah, this month we're covering the canceled Friday the 13th reboot, both versions that got a script that was supposed to come out, and ideally, if I can get this edited on time, it will be out. This will be being released that Friday that the movie was supposed to be released. So this is the freshest, you can still smell the rotting corpse project that I've ever covered. The Highlander remake is kind of like you got like an unborn child in the room with you listening to it, whereas this is like a dead person.
Yeah.
And so, because we have two different scripts, I'll save the overall summaries until we get to them. So let's just jump into the general Friday the 13th series right now. Now, I'll probably not say that much just because I covered my feelings on all the movies way back when I did Freddy vs. Jason, and that took forever. So we can start. It started, 1980 with Friday the 13th, which is the film that really sort of cemented the slasher boom after Halloween started it.
Definitely.
And I like the first one. It's one of those films where recently people have kind of started turning on it a little bit, but I still like that one.
Yeah, and I think that one still kind of works. I haven't watched it in a few years, but when I was growing up, like when I was young, I learned about Jason Voorhees, and Pamela Voorhees was this sort of legend of the series, because obviously she's only in the first one as the killer, and anyone who watched Scream discovered that Jason wasn't actually, in the first one. And I'd seen like 4, 5, 6, Jason X and things, and finally got to see the first one. And like, even knowing that the twist is her and it's the mystery, it was like insane to see the legend on screen for the first time when I was 12.
Yeah, that's one of those things you always hear about, is that, oh, Jason's not in that first one. Like, that's one of those things you kind of know about even before you see it.
Yeah.
And then the second one, when I finally got around to seeing that one, I was actually surprised that Jason was wearing a potato sack on his head instead of the hockey mask. I'm like, wait a minute. What's that? Because before I ever saw any of the movies, I was like, oh, I still somehow knew who Jason was. I don't know. But it's like, I watched that second movie and I'm like, wait a minute, what's that?
Yeah, and just like, wait, well, doesn't he have a hockey mask? Why is he running?
Yeah, why is he running? Why is he getting his ass kicked? Why is he falling off a chair and knocking himself out? He's not a zombie in this one until they kind of try and retcon him into one.
Yeah, which I always thought was a fun thing. Like, some of these movies, they kind of retcon themselves heavily. But I thought with Jason, they kind of like they never really set him up for the next film. It's always the next film's responsibility to bring him back.
Yeah,
and you sort of get this little continuity-ish, and then this evolution as he turns out he wasn't dead in the last one until like the fourth one, and then he's struck by lightning in 6 to come back. And then it's zombie Jason.
And then you get to part 8 and 9, and they say Jason's been dead all along.
And then 10, they're like, he's actually Wolverine.
Yeah. He's Wolverine and the Terminator.
Yeah.
It kind of turns into in the one script we're going to talk about, but no, 2's good. 3's good. I think it's kind of cool that they put it out with the 3D glasses so you can actually watch it in 3D.
Yeah, I've still never seen the 3D because over here in the UK, they've only ever seemed to have done the standard DVD,
Yeah,
which is a bit of a shame.
in the Blu-ray tin box set that I bought, they have little 3D glasses come with. The only problem is that they're really tiny; they barely fit my head,
Oh,
and I don't know what it is about my eyes, but it seems like if I watch a movie for long enough, I just stop seeing the 3D after a while.
I get that on a lot of 3D movies. I think Age of Ultron's the last 3D thing I ended up seeing,
I saw
and
what was
I
the
didn't even
last
know.
one I saw in 3D? Was it maybe Dark Tower was in 3D? I can't remember. It might have,
Uh, I, s- I just remember I stopped watching the 3Ds. In fact, I remember I took the Conan the Barbarian remake. I got on a 3D Blu-ray because they just sold it as 3D. It's like
yeah,
2D, free 3D version with it.
yeah.
My parents accidentally bought a 3D TV somehow. So I tried it at home and like I took it back 3 times being like, there's no 3D in this.
But no, the only 3D Blu-ray I own is the Wolverine, and that's because that's the only set that has the unrated director's cut on it.
Yeah,
But
that's same for me.
but no, the 3Ds, and I've never even watched the 3D version, but
No, I
but
haven't.
but no, the 3D, it's that old school kind of 3D, and it works okay. It's probably of those old 3D movies that I've seen, it's probably the best one because I mean Amityville 3D is kind of bad, and you got like Jaws 3D, and it didn't last that long. But no, that one's good, and then Part 4 is actually pretty strong. Where you get the first of like the 3 Doctor Who incarnations of Tommy Jarvis because he's a different person in every movie.
Yeah, which is kind of cool that they kept a character going, which you don't quite get in a lot of these either.
No, that's the only one in Friday the 13th I think who keeps going besides Jason is him.
Yeah, I think it's just 3 Tommies.
I mean, Halloween
Yeah,
Halloween keeps kind of jumping
and
between characters that they follow.
yeah, it seems to have like Laurie Strode and then Jamie.
Yeah, and then
Flip flops in which universe you're following.
and every 20 years they go back to Laurie Strode.
Yeah,
But but no, Part 4 is actually pretty good. Yeah, you got the young Corey Feldman in there, and you got Crispin Glover doing the ridiculous dance. That's a fun one.
yeah, that's a crazy dance. He's a crazy dude.
Yeah, he is. But and then Part 5, A New Beginning, which is the infamous one that doesn't have Jason in it, and the twist at the end that doesn't really make any sense because this ambulance driver
Yeah,
can just bust through doors. But I like that movie just because of how ridiculous it is.
I remember really liking a lot of the kills in it and being
Yeah,
sad that they weren't Jason.
because like I mean, how is that guy gonna like twist the belt around and crack his head? He's just a dude.
Yeah. Do you wonder if Halloween Resurrection like saw that movie and took it as their inspiration to bring Michael back? But ambulance drivers, clearly they're hard as
Oh,
nails. Double
yeah,
as Michael.
maybe that wouldn't surprise me. And of course, in this we get Tommy Jarvis is now a crazy guy who barely speaks and knows kung fu,
Hmm.
which I'm like, and he doesn't really do anything in the movie, which is kind of sucks. But
Yeah.
and of course we get because that didn't work, so they did Part 6 where Jason comes back and he's a zombie, and that's one of the best ones in the series.
I love Part 6. It really brings a lot of comedy and it just knows exactly what it is.
Yeah, and it's never too ridiculous with the comedy to not
Mm.
work. And that's the Jason I'm always playing as in the video game. So
I'm so dying to play the game. I backed it. I have my digital code, but my console died.
oh
And I just haven't had enough money to get another one. So I've got
yeah,
this code saved for like months.
well good.
I can't play it.
By the time you get it cashed in, they'll probably have fixed all the glitches. Like that's likely. But but no, I'm always playing as Part 6 with his spear. And Part 7 comes out, and this is where I'm kind of like, the movie's all right. Like, I think it starts off fairly well and ends fairly well. Like, that ending with the psychic chick just beating the shit out of Jason is actually pretty good. But, like, the middle part of the movie where they bring the other characters into it, it's kind of boring.
Mm.
And they're all basically the same person. You have the bitch, the lesser bitch, and then all these other characters who blend in together.
Yeah, but a very cool looking Jason.
Yeah, it's a good Jason. And he has the best unmasked look in the series, I think.
Mm. definitely.
And they recreated that pretty well in the game.
Yeah, I've seen images of that. That looks really cool.
And of course, yeah, but no, that's actually pretty good. That's the first Kane Hodder Jason, and it's the only one where he really gets to distinguish himself.
Yeah,
because he's doing like the breathing and like the slow walking and stuff. And then Part 8 is not good.
No, Part 8 is not good.
Part 8
and
is
really
so
strange,
boring.
But it has one of my favorite like little plot hole things. Jason kills everyone on the boat at the beginning, and then the boat drifts out of Crystal Lake to the sea.
Yeah.
To get onto like the boat to get to New York. How did it drift out of the lake?
I guess because
did he hitch it to a car?
Yeah, like why didn't he just get out of the lake and walk?
Yeah.
And why does he care if they're going to New York? Like and what's so funny is that they're going from New Jersey to New York, and they somehow get lost in the fog on the way there. And it's just boring. And when they get to the city, they don't do anything really with it. And apparently, I didn't know this about New York before I saw the movie, but apparently every night at midnight, their sewers flood with toxic waste.
Yeah, apparently so.
And you get...
Must suck to live down there.
Yeah, and you have the two horribly bland leads, and their horribly bland romance because they have no chemistry together. I'm like, I don't really care if you're not living up to your father's expectations as a boat captain. Like, why is this in the movie?
Yeah. I also found Jason looks quite small in this one as well, somehow.
Yeah, and it's the same actor, which is weird.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that you have that silly thing where it's like we're seeing little boy Jason floating around as a ghost, which is never explained, and then he gets hit by toxic waste, and his face looks terrible in this movie, by the way.
Yeah.
And they recreated that for the game.
Amazing.
But it's like he turns into a baby, and like, is it the 2001 ending of Friday the 13th? But either way, after this movie bombed in 1989 was a bad year for horror because all the main franchises just did horrible box office, and then you had the straight-to-video Puppet Master because of that became the most successful horror movie of '89.
Oh wow!
At least according to Full Moon. Full Moon might be fudging their numbers a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But Paramount decided they were done; they weren't making any more, and then eventually, I'm not sure the details, but through Sean Cunningham, I think they ended up licensing the character of Jason to New Line, and so we got Jason Goes to Hell, which. It's not a good Jason movie because it just makes up a ton of bullshit out of nowhere, but I actually don't think it's that bad on its own terms.
Yeah, it's weird. It's an interesting idea, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was quite an interesting movie, but I do remember sitting there being like, and where's my Jason?
Yeah, because Jason's in it. He's in it at the beginning, he gets blown up, and then his heart turns into an I don't know what and starts possessing people. And then there's, like, the Necronomicon from Evil Dead is in the basement of his house. So Jason's a Deadite?
I guess. But it did answer an important question for me. Because obviously, like, the zeitgeist had always been Freddy versus Jason. And I'd not... I think The Final Friday was the last of the Jason movies I got my hands on. So in my teens at the time, it was just when they started cracking down on people underage buying movies. Because these were all rated 18 in the UK. And like before that, like, I'd bought Freddy vs. Jason on DVD in my school uniform. And then like the next year, suddenly they were cracking down on it and I couldn't get this one. I had to like send my parents to get it for my birthday. But I'd always heard the zeitgeist of Freddy vs. Jason. I'm like, wow, how did they decide that these two are the ones going? And of course, it's set up at the end of this one.
Yeah, and then they waited 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they originally they were going to do it right. The whole point of Jason Goes to Hell was to set up Jason for Freddy vs. Jason. And then or I've heard that, and I've also heard that they threw that little clip in at the last minute just as like a nod to the fact that they were going to do it. And the Freddy hand at the end is actually Kane Hodder's hand wearing the glove. So he's played that, and he did stunt. What he was the stunt double for Leatherface in the third of those movies.
Yeah, in Texas 3, which they show in Freddy vs. Jason.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the institution.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought.
Oh.
But yeah, they were going to do Freddy versus Jason, and then they just didn't for 10 years. And so Cunningham got tired of waiting and rushed Jason X into production, and it looks like a TV movie.
Yeah. So this was my introduction to Jason X.
Oh, it was mine too.
Yeah, I loved it as a kid. Since I've gone
remember,
back and watched them, been like, wow, everything's a cutaway.
I remember watching this at 10. It was either this or Freddy versus Jason was my first. I can't remember which. But I know I saw this one, and I didn't see it again for like 10 years. And then I watched it, and I'm like, what is this? It's a movie which is trying to be a comedy, but I think it stops being funny like slightly less than halfway through, and I'm like, okay, I get the joke, move on.
Yeah. Although I do like Jason's look in the beginning of this.
Yeah, his look at first is pretty good, and you got the David Cronenberg cameo.
Yeah, which made so much more sense when I got older.
And the Uber Jason look is kind of cool, if a little Star Trek TV budget-y.
Yeah.
The whole thing looks like it could have been filmed on leftover sets from a Star Trek show, which, I don't know, considering Enterprise was coming out around this time, that's not saying a whole lot.
They're the test sets for Enterprise, and like, right, we'll redesign them after this film.
Yeah, see, let's just make Scott Bakula versus Jason. How about that? He can quantum leap away.
Yeah, they can go to any time period.
Yeah, so yeah, that was that movie, and that came and went. I believe that was in theaters for like a week, and that was after sitting on the shelf for like a year or two.
Yeah.
And then Freddy vs. Jason finally got made, and that one's all right. It's got some heavy flaws to it, but it's watchable enough, and it gets the versus concept down perfectly well.
Absolutely. I think the beginning, the middle is kind of dull, but that last half hour makes up for everything.
Yeah, and Freddy just needed a few more kills. I think Ken Kersinger is okay as Jason, but I mean, they could have handled him a little bit better script-wise, because he's just kind of there to lumber around.
Yeah, you see, he doesn't really do too much, but he gets all the cool kills, and they give him a good look. I was interested if the yellow jacket was on purpose, because I think that's what Steve wears in the final Friday when he battles Jason at the end.
Oh.
And I've always been curious if that's supposed to be the same jacket or not.
I don't know.
Or if I've worked into it too much.
But I mean, they did, to be fair, they did follow up Jason Goes to Hell fairly well by having Jason in hell at the end of the movie.
Right.
And did a better job of that than most of those other scripts did. Oh, but that's a whole that's a whole other episode. You can go listen to me suffer through that. But no. And of course, you know, I don't know how they could have followed up the Elm Street movies particularly well, or at least continuity wise, because Freddy's Dead didn't leave a whole lot of room, and New Nightmare was a meta movie, so they were just kind of like, They just kind of fudged it a bit, but it kind of worked. Although the humans do Jason and Freddy are technically human, but the human teenage characters are kind of bad. Like,
yeah,
you know it's not. You know it's really saying something when the most interesting one is the Jason Mewes wannabe, who's like hey man, that goalie was pissed about something.
My favorite guys are always the two in the field when Jason turns up, and they just start harassing him.
The guy who's trying to be Jack Black.
Yeah, he's just like, why don't you go find a pig to? He just smacks it, just breaks his friend's neck. He's like, oh, son of a bitch.
This Everclear is kicking my ass. I just want to know why he looked at that hockey mask and went redneck.
Yeah.
Like, that would have made way more sense if he was wearing the potato sack on his head.
Yeah, it would.
And then a few years went by and they did the remake, which I know that one is, a lot of people like that one, but I'm like, I watched that movie and I'm like, dear Lord, these characters are annoying.
I have a funny time where I flipped on that movie because when it was coming out, I was like, oh, excited, like more Jason. Like, I'll take anything with Jason. 'Cause, my favorite slasher. and I was on holiday with my girlfriend at the time in Germany, and I was like, "We're seeing this movie." She said, "I've only found German cinemas." I'm like, "Okay, like not to piss on my franchise, but it's Friday the 13th. I think I'll work it out." And we went and watched it like purely in German, and she speaks German, so she started to translate. And I'm like, "No, no, no, trust me, I got this."
You did not get that.
And I had a great time. And I came back and I told my friends, like, "Oh, what do you guys think of the new Friday?" They're like, "Oh, it's awful." I'm like, "Really? I loved it. Like, didn't you find it really condescending and like really stupid?" And I was like, "No." And then I watched it in an entirely foreign language and like got everything. Either it's the best piece of visual storytelling that's ever been put on screen, or it's so simple and so stupid that it didn't need sound to follow.
But no, what just annoys me about that is how, okay, you go, which weirdly the structure is going to be kind of similar to one of the scripts we talk about. It's like, okay, opening, Pamela. Then we get 10 minutes of introducing a whole group of characters, and then they all die. And then we get another group of characters who are annoying as hell. Talking about the black dude talking about every little thing is racist, and you got the whiny Asian guy, and then the dude from Transformers who's playing the same character from Transformers.
I've been blowing minds with that recently. Like, is it in continuity of Transformers? Because that's Trent.
Yeah, it is.
He's playing Trent.
And he's like, "Oh no," and he's like, "Oh no, they're gonna wreck the house." Ugh. Like, why'd you bring them here, dickhead?
Yeah, it's like, why are you friends with these people?
And what's really funny about this movie is that apparently Michael Bay had to walk out of the theater because of how graphic and gratuitous the sex was.
Yeah. There's all sorts of weird things from the guy who does lingerie adverts.
Lingerie advertisements and very creepily panning the camera up teenage girls' asses now.
Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, no, this is too far."
But, I mean, to be fair, there are a couple of things I like. The guy from Supernatural's okay. Killer Frost from The Flash is okay.
Yeah, which I only just realized that was her this year.
Yeah. And Jason, I actually think is really good. It's just a shame they don't give him anything terribly interesting to do.
Yeah. So I quite liked, is it Derek Mears playing Jason?
Yeah, Derek Mears, yeah.
Yeah, I quite liked what he was doing with it. He looks good. So I kind of like how they put the sack and the hockey mask both in there.
Although the hockey mask was incredibly random, at least in the cut I saw, because he just kind of, he's like, "Oh, look, a mask."
Oh, God, yeah, because it changes on the extended cut, doesn't it?
Because, I mean, the version I saw, at least, was he kills the guy in the room, and then he lifts up a sheet, and there's just a hockey mask sitting there.
Yeah, I can't remember how he gets it now. Oh, it's been so long since I've seen it.
I heard there was a version where the guy's smoking pot and wearing the mask or something. I don't know. It's weird.
So I remember seeing that, but I can't remember if that's just in the deleted scenes that came on my DVD, or if it's actually in the film.
See, I have the Blu-ray. I haven't watched it in a while though, because I don't like it. Every time I do that, every time I rewatch those movies, it's I'll get to Jason Goes to Hell, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. And then nothing happened with the series after that point. It was a reasonable hit over Valentine's Day weekend, weirdly enough. But I think it had a huge drop off on the second week. And then they wanted to do a sequel, but the Platinum Dunes guys were talking about how it was really difficult to get the rights in place because New Line had Jason and Paramount had the title. But then again, Platinum Dunes guys, they just seem to hate making sequels for whatever reason. They actively avoided making a sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but they said, "Hey, let's make a prequel." And to just kind of bring things up to the present day to where this script is that basically this is really weird how this there's a lot of really weird stuff going on with this whole is that what happened is that Paramount was releasing Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, and Warner Brothers, who had worked with him a bunch, decided they wanted a cut of that money. So as part of the deal with Paramount, because Warner Brothers owns New Line now, which is a whole complicated story. They said, okay, you can have the rights to Jason back for a limited time until 2018, I think. And Paramount went, okay, good. And then they hired David Bruckner to direct, who was known for he did a VHS segment, which I've never watched. I've never watched that movie, but his segment I keep hearing is either the very best or the absolute worst. I hear no middle ground on it.
I haven't seen the VHS ones. I saw the ABCs, and then I kind of gave up on those anthologies.
I don't. Yeah, I tend not to go to anthologies right away because, with the exception of the first Creep Show, you're bound to get like one good one okay one, and like 3 crappy ones, especially with like the ABCs of Death, where it's like, oh, we got 26 segments. How many of these are going to be shit?
Yeah. Yeah, you were saying so?
Yeah, I was saying, but yeah, they hired him on to direct, and the initial idea was that they wanted to do it as a found footage movie.
Yeah, I heard that, which I wasn't excited by. I don't like found footage.
I like some found footage movies, but there's a lot of just shitty, boring ones.
Yeah.
And according to Bruckner, he spent like a year trying to figure out how to do it as found footage, and then Paramount just suddenly changed their minds and said, no, don't do that. And I think the speculated reason is because a bunch of found footage movies came out and bombed. So, chasing a trend there. And so they brought in Nick Antosca, who writes the first draft we're going to talk about here, called Friday the 13th 3D, which when we actually go into the details, I'm going to have to talk about that title.
Yeah.
Because they really don't do anything with that. And he gets brought in. Now, he's written some stuff. He created the Sci-Fi Channel show, Channel Zero, which I don't watch, but I've heard good things about that.
Same.
I've heard it's like, because Sci-Fi Channel actually makes good material now. Who knew?
Yeah, it's like they were sick of being the joke and decided to actually put effort in.
But they won't change the name back, though.
No, still Siffy.
But, I mean, I'm going to have to watch it just because it sounds interesting. And he also wrote 3 episodes of Season 3 of Hannibal.
Oh, okay.
Which were, including the season finale, which was really good.
That was really good.
Which, and then again, because the way TV works, you got whole writers' rooms. Some of his ideas might have been around in that whole season. So,
yeah, it's a good point.
And so, yeah, I generally like what he's done, and I can say now how his script Friday the 13th 3D is. The basic summary is that it's the last few days of summer at Camp Crystal Lake in 1988, and we get a whole bunch of counselors there, and that's kind of the problem because there's like 15 characters in this script you gotta keep track of.
Oh, yeah. I had trouble working out some of them.
And I didn't have too much trouble following this, not as much trouble as I had with the second draft, where I just had no idea who anyone was after a certain point.
Yeah, that's real true.
but it's all these counselors, and they're different sort of, teenage stuff going on with them, with relationships and whatnot. And their banter, and you got the pothead, and all this comes to a head like a couple nights before the camp shuts down, and they hear the story of Pamela Voorhees, whose son drowned in the lake, and then she went crazy and started killing counselors, and eventually she was killed and her head was chopped off. And so they decided to go out to the old campground across the lake where this happened, and while they're there, one of them goes off on this drunken, vulgar rant, which went on way too long. And that apparently awakes Jason, who shows up and then starts killing them all. That's a fair summation.
I think that's pretty much exactly what happens.
Yeah, and it's a fairly basic Friday the 13th slasher script. Now, this one I find to be a pretty fun read on the whole. I
quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. There's a few little niggling problems I have here and there, but to get into the details, sort of going into what happens in it, it starts off first off the title, Friday the 13th 3D. I'm guessing this was a studio mandate to make it 3D, because the script, aside from that title, I can only think of one, maybe 2 times, but I'm not positive on the second one, where it actually mentions 3D effects in the entire thing. Yeah,
I remember when I was reading it, I think I only saw one time where it said about in 3D, and then it realized like 40 pages in, it's like, it hasn't mentioned anything else in 3D.
Yeah, and the 3D, it's a scene early on where the campers are catching fireflies, and it's like, oh, the fireflies are in 3D, and I want to say it's mentioned one more time, but I just can't quite remember it if it's even there.
I remember something. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's like it might have been there, but I could just be making it up in my head.
There's a couple of scenes where I thought that they could do it in 3D. But the only one I remember thinking was I thought I saw where it said in 3D specifically was passing one of the signs, or the title comes up in 3D or something.
Well, they pass.
Oh.
There's like a sign for the original Camp Crystal Lake, which is it's like fallen over and in the woods next to the old campsite,
Mm.
which they showed like it's got its own special font and everything in the script.
Yeah, I saw that a few times. I was like, huh, can you do that in a script? Because I like write scripts occasionally, and I'm actually working on an anthology film. Speaking of anthology films, but
I've seen scripts which will have a different font, like the scripts for the new It movie when the month and the date comes up in the title cards, like it has a very specific font.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but I mean that's about it that I can think of off the top of
yeah.
my head. It's sometimes they'll bold something. That's about it.
I've always assumed like scripts have a vague structure, but I just wrote a script, not to promote myself too much or anything, but just to say that when I handed it in, like everybody moaned at my formatting.
Oh yeah, that
They're
happens.
like reading these ones and like these are kind of similar to what I did. Why are people moaning at?
These seem pretty standard in terms of formatting to me, at least. I mean, from what I've read.
Mm.
But again, who knows if anything I've read has actually been any good. But I mean, it doesn't seem bad. Like there isn't like the slug lines aren't specific with saying exterior. Well, some of them are, but they're not numbered. But I mean, that doesn't really matter from what I've seen. But okay, the first page of this script after the title page is cast of characters, and there's 13 of them.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them.
But then, even then, there's still a few like minor characters in this that aren't mentioned here. Like there's the local woman with the missing arm who doesn't get mentioned, even though she plays kind of a significant role in the finale.
Oh yeah.
And the two local cops aren't mentioned at all. And like when they showed up, I went, "Oh, this just turned into Last House on the Left." But
yeah.
that fits this movie's tone a little bit more, and they don't keep showing up.
Yeah, they don't go over the top with them, which is quite nice.
And okay, so all the characters are listed out, and they're all given their one sentence character description: the awkward smart kid, the straight A student, etc., etc. One of them is called the Golden Retriever, and I don't know what that means.
I don't know. Loyal? Maybe he sheds on the carpet.
But I'm like, all I can imagine whenever I see them when that gets mentioned is like, is he just like the dog from Homeward Bound? You even got the Don Amici voice.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I actually didn't. I kind of skipped these character descriptions mostly. So I forgot he was called the Golden Retriever.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can skip the first page and you don't really miss anything because you can follow who everyone is reasonably well through the whole thing. But the point is that looking at this, it's like there's way too many characters here. Like most of them I can figure out fine, but there's just a couple who don't really do a whole lot and don't really serve much of a purpose. And hell, even one of them, the local guy, is just tacked on to the end there right before Jason.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey.
Well, I do love Jason's description. Yeah. Nice guy. You'll meet him soon.
And he doesn't get an age. He just gets a question mark.
Yeah.
But okay, so it opens on Crystal Lake, and you get introduced to these characters, and you got 80s music playing. At first it's George Michael's "One More Try."
Yeah. I need to go back and listen to because I can't remember which song that is.
I can remember, and I cobbled together a YouTube playlist of the different songs.
I should have done that.
But yeah, there's only 7, but that's one thing I like. I like how it establishes the sort of the 80s tone of it and the setting by having the music playing on the radio. They do some clever things because there's a point where the music specifically stops when Jason stomps the boombox.
Yeah.
Or the radio or whatever it was.
Yeah. Hey, carry on, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was going to say is you get kind of introduced to a whole bunch of them. You get Sloane, the sarcastic girl, and you get, she's doing lessons in saving drowning people with the counselors, and she just starts talking in the middle of it. They're like, "You're supposed to be dead."
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's funny. And that's one thing I like about this is that it's genuinely funny throughout a lot of it until shit hits the fan, and it gets pretty serious, which I like.
I really like that as well, because it works really well. It's nice, this nice light tone, and then seems to build this dark undercurrent before, bam, like holy crap, you said shit, it's the fan.
Yeah, shit hits the fan, and Jason just starts slaughtering everybody. Now, I don't know how much detail I'm going to go into on this, but you get the establishment for the different characters. You got, Kevin and his fraternal twin brother Brad, who they're at the... I don't even know if I really want to go into huge amount of details about this, just because I go into detail because there's all these different things that happen in this script. But basically, you get introduced to all of these guys. You get, they're the twins, Kevin's the awkward kid who's single, and then the athlete and Brad's the athlete who's dating Amber, who's this overachiever straight A student. And you have Vanessa, who's the hot chick that Kevin has a crush on, blah, 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 but she kind of likes the local guy who doesn't show up until later. And you get Weezer, the stoner.
Yeah. It's just going champion stoner of all time.
He is always high. And I like the fact he's one of the only ones who doesn't go to the original campground.
Yeah.
And
Does he just...
Yeah, he stays behind. He's like, I believe in bad vibes, man. And you have Greg, who's a goofball, but also he's a weird kid. Greg is a character I don't really quite get in this script because he's likable almost every time he appears, except for twice, which is supremely bizarre because he just starts acting like a dick, and then he tries to run away with the car keys later on.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of an inconsistent character.
Yeah, because he's mostly harmless, isn't he? And then it goes way too far a couple of times. Like, oh.
Yeah. Most of the time he's funny. Like, there's a scene where he's wearing this old hockey mask and just knocking golf balls into the lake. And I'm like, this is funny. and throughout it, it's like, oh yeah, this whole thing is funny. And eventually, there's a young boy who drowns while everybody is distracted. Oh, I forgot to mention them. You have Kirby, the religious girl, who there's this running joke about her being a virgin throughout this thing, which doesn't really go anywhere.
No, there's an interesting bit towards the end, but I don't know if we want to wait till we get there.
Yeah, let's wait till we get to that, because it does do something with her a little bit. But I'll just say the script does a fairly good job of surprising you with who lives and who dies. Yes,
I was going to mention that, because everybody seems to break the rules, or at least in some way break the rules, if we go by Scream's analogy.
Which I'd rather... like, where's Jamie? It's like, Jamie Kennedy, shut up. This doesn't apply to you.
Yeah. Because I was just like, I couldn't tell you who the survivor is supposed to be, because this person gets with that person's doing drugs. Like, nobody's the virginal character, it seems.
Yeah, and even the virginal character gets drunk and high in one scene.
Yeah. It's like, I'm generally confused on who's gonna survive.
And they did a good job with that. I like that. It surpassed expectations. And okay, so this young boy nearly drowns because a bunch of them because basically Brad runs off with his girlfriend and Kevin's left there and he gets distracted and the only other guy up there is Weezer and he's high, so he's not paying attention. But Brad actually does save the kid, and this is where we meet the head counselor, Duckworth, who reads way older than he does to me for some reason.
Yeah, I just realized he's supposed to be 26. And he reads like someone's dad, like of these kids.
He reads like he's 35, and then I look at the character list, it says he's 26. I'm like, I'm 25. Fuck.
And I'm 29, and I thought he was older than me.
And he gets introduced, and we also get introduced to Nurse Nicole, who's 35. And these two characters are probably the two most pointless in the entire thing. You could almost just write them out after a certain point.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't really change much of anything. But yeah. I'm kind of glad Duckworth is in this just because he has an interesting death scene later on. And just looking at his name just makes me think, okay, is this going to cross over with the Mighty Ducks?
I could have something different where I'd hear the DuckTales theme tune.
Oh.
Just for Duckworth.
Because I think it's Mr. Duckworth or Ducksworth that the team is named after in that movie.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, well, if this ends up being a crossover, it'll be better than D3, which was terrible. But
That's so true.
Emilio Estevez versus Jason. He brings fucking Tracy Walter with him from Repo Man.
I go see that movie.
It's so good. But no, so that happens, and then later that night, Dylan shows up, and they're all sitting around the campfire smoking and drinking. And then he tells the story of how in 1996, and they don't say his name, and this is a weird running thing in this, where you don't hear Jason's full name until the very end, and it's meant to be this big dramatic moment.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit strange, because the idea I got from the script is that we don't really see Jason throughout the whole thing, and then it's the big surprise right at the end. Is it? But we're here to see the dude in the hockey mask.
Yeah, it's weird, and you even see you see him wearing the hockey mask, so we'll get to that. But he tells the story about how in 1966 Jason drowned, and Pamela went insane, and because it was the 60s, she was convinced that the drugs and free love were why the counselors were distracted, and Jason died, so she went crazy and killed 6 counselors before one of them beheaded her, and this was all at the old campgrounds across the lake. And so they all get this idea to go over there, except for Kirby and Greg. Greg, Weezer, because Kirby believes in ghosts, because she's religious, I guess. And Weezer believes in bad vibes, man. Which is so funny. And on their way there, they run into the groundskeeper, Frank, who's hacking up stuff with a machete. He's hacking up, like, undergrowth and stuff. And he agrees to take them over there, but first he's like, give me that. And he puffs on the joint. They're like, wow, Frank's redneck Buddha.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm like, I'm with this script totally.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm not keen on in the script, and it's just a personal pet peeve, is when they like wink in the script at you. They're like, "Oh, that machete. We might see it later."
That's fine by me because I know it's not going to be in the movie.
Yeah, there's on screen that makes perfect sense. That's clearly someone's like, I want to make sure the director understands this is going to be Jason's machete.
But the thing is that I've read Shane Black's scripts, and he does that way more than this script.
Oh, really?
He loves his little asides to the point where it's like, oh, that's what that was about in the movie. Like, there's a lot of little asides like that. Like I just read the Monster Squad script, his draft, a little while ago, and he has a few little snarky little references he throws in there. And so they take 2 canoes across the lake, and he talks about how he was there when it happened, and he knew the kids. He didn't know the Voorhees family, but Jason very rarely came out when he did. He was always wearing like a Halloween mask of some sort. And he says that the body was never found. And some of them are like, huh, wait, what?
Yeah. Crap, I forgot what they do next. Yeah, some of them like freaked out, and then others like, come on.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in this. And so they make their way to the old camp, and while they're there, Greg just suddenly goes off on this really incredibly vulgar rant about Pamela Voorhees. Like, yeah. Because there's something about how, like, because her husband ran off, and so Jason was all she had, and that's why she went crazy. So, Elias reference.
Yeah.
Poor fucking Elias. He's always almost in these movies.
Yeah. We'll never make it.
Elias Voorhees never going to be in one of these movies. But he's saying stuff like, let's go jizz on her grave. Let's go have an orgy on top of her grave. And you never gave head until the day you died, which admittedly I did kind of laugh at. He goes on for so long and so loud that there's like a cut to like it echoing over the woods, and like a little ripple disturbs the lake, and it's like, okay, is Jason coming or is a T-Rex coming?
One or the other's been offended by him.
Yeah, and what's so weird about this rant is not only does he not talk like this at any other point in this thing, like he can be kind of vulgar, but it's generally in a fun way. This is just like, first off, it goes on way too long to the point where it's just like, we get it.
And it just goes crazy, like, yeah, jizzing on her grave and...
Like, I get that he's drunk, but it's like, the orgy, really? And what's important to mention about that is that all the other characters are never horrible. Like some of them kind of fade into the background, especially Kirby. But the rest are either fun or at least fairly like I think Kevin is a fairly likable lead. He's got that thing going on where he's got a thing for this girl that doesn't really like him, and that he's just completely hopeless about it, which feels very realistic and close to.
So I was going to say, and I like the way he kind of handles it as well. Like he doesn't turn into the asshole that like ruins everything when he's being rejected.
Yeah, he's not. He actually does take it pretty well. Yeah, you're right about that. And hold on. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay, good. So that's probably not gonna be recorded. I have my phone plugged in to charge, and it just went ding. Because it got slightly jarred loose, but no, and also I find Brad and Amber's relationship works pretty well. Like they seem like they're reasonably in love as much as the teenagers can be.
Yeah,
and I find couple little relationship moments they have work pretty well and aren't annoying. Because believe me, I've seen movies that go on and on about relationship shit that just are just like I don't care. The most recent example being Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Oh yeah,
I don't need your fucking relationship talk with the princess. Go away and go do cool stuff. But no, and Sloane's actually really funny and charming. Kirby's kind of funny because she's not the annoying religious stereotype. And Weezer's just hilarious with his bad vibes talk and constantly lighting up.
Absolutely, they all seem to be like a kind of nice, likable bunch.
With the exception of Greg in this one scene.
Yeah, except for Greg's just like that guy.
I mean, his usual brand of douchiness in this is him asking, would you have sex if both Patrick Swayze and Johnny Depp were begging for it? Which, whoa, too close to a Freddy vs. Jason crossover there. Or, since this takes place in 88, a 21 Jump Street crossover.
That would be weird.
Yeah, Johnny Depp's character is going undercover at Crystal Lake.
He becomes one of the teen, like the guy staying at the camp, not even a counselor, like one of the kids. That would be Jason.
That would be way too funny. But no, like that's generally like he's generally kind of has no filter and not exactly the most sensitive individual, but he's never unbearable except this scene. And he also does this thing which I don't get the joke, where he keeps messing up the Voorhees name.
Yeah, I guess it's just
it's meant to be funny.
It's supposed to be funny. He's drunk. He's not getting it.
But that joke's not really that funny. Like Vorzazel, and it keeps going on, and then they just stop after a while.
Yeah.
So after that rather unpleasant interlude, things go back to normal. They're wandering around the old campgrounds. Frank disappears. Sloane's going into one of the cabins, and she finds a picture of Jason because he's wearing him. I believe he's standing next to his mother wearing a Mickey Mouse mask, and on the back it says Jason 1965. So that's the first time we get his first name. And there's a little charm bracelet on the ground next to it, which is significant later in one of the elements that's just kind of whatever in this script.
I thought we'll get to it later, but I thought more would happen with this.
Yeah, more would. I mean, we can mention it now because it's not that big of a deal. It basically ends up being this script's equivalent of the sweater from Part 2. Where Sloane puts it on and pretends to be Pamela towards the end, and it's like, okay, that's fine, but it doesn't really. It literally is like 2 pages from the end when she does that. Yeah,
I thought it was going to turn out to be more. Instead of like it trying to do that, it turned out to be more almost like one of those cursed item in the grave. She'd end up taking it off and throwing it, and it kind of that would be it. Jason, she'd no longer be Jason's target. They'd do something like that with it.
Oh, okay. I get what you mean. Like a home track at Ascent.
Yeah.
Okay, so she finds that everyone else is kind of wandering around, and Greg is in a shed, and he finds an old hockey mask which is described as being very minimalist from the 1960s. And I looked it up, and it really is just like a blank white mask with eye holes and just a few, like, not even evenly spaced little holes around the mouth.
Oh.
It would have been kind of creepy looking. If anything, it reminded me of, in concept, of what the mask looked like in the promotional material for the Scream TV show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty weird looking mask.
Yeah, I haven't watched that show.
I've caught a couple of episodes, but like a couple of seasons in, so a major plot twist got spoiled. It was like 2 seasons long. So I was like, oh, whoops. But no. Yeah, some of my friends really like it.
But it kind of reminded me of that. But they're wandering around the camp, and Kevin notices someone very tall watching them and watching them from the woods. And so they kind of get back together. Basically, everybody sort of, rendezvous back in the camp, and they decide to leave. And they assume it was Frank trying to scare them, but when they get to the shore of the lake, they find the second canoe gone and assume Frank took it. And so they can't all fit in the one boat, so 2 people have to get off, and Vanessa decides she's going to go walk in the woods, and then Kevin is supposed to jump in and say, oh, I'll walk with you, but then Dylan makes the move, and so they're walking off into the woods, and there's this really creepy part where the boat's going across the lake, and they see the other canoe just sitting in the middle, empty, with no one in it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really like, ooh, like things are starting to get creepy now. And then I got slightly confused. I had to reread where it jumps to the next scene, and I still thought we were on the canoe. I was like, I'm so confused.
I don't even remember specifically what the next scene was.
I can't remember at the moment, but I just remember I was like, hang on. And then I had to go back and realize that I just messed up reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's August 1988 is when this takes place. Which is important because there's a song that plays later on which didn't exist when this is set. But okay, so basically I think we get some scenes of them coming into the camp at night. And then it jumps to, and they're like preparing for bed and stuff. And then it jumps to Vanessa and Dylan in the woods in this old gazebo, which is in the middle of the woods for some reason.
A classy romantic location.
Yeah, and they're making out, but then they decide they're going to have a date the next night. And so they split off in different directions. So Dylan can go to the road and get to his car, and she can go to the camp. And you see like someone watching them from the woods while this is going on. And then it intercuts between the 2 of them walking through the woods so that you don't know that this person is following them, which one they're stalking.
Yeah.
But then eventually it turns out Dylan is climbing a ridge, and he sees 2 boots in front of him at the top, and he freaks out and falls off. And this is just brutal because he falls down to the bottom into like a creek. And like his ribs are broken, he's all messed up, and then you see this mysterious figure in this outfit coming down. They point out that it's Frank's clothes.
Yeah. So we might assume it's Frank. Like, obviously, most of us will know that it's probably not. It's a nice little touch for the casuals who might be coming in for their first Friday.
Yeah, and they say it's Jason. It's Jason. They don't say it, but we all know it. And he comes down. He finally gets down to where Dylan is, and Dylan finally gets his flashlight turned back on, and we don't see the face, but he sees it, and he freaks out as he gets grabbed and dragged off. And presumably killed. Yeah,
we assume. I thought that's a nice, creepy first death.
Yeah, I thought that was really creepy, just this idea he's out in the middle of nowhere, he's already injured from falling, and Jason's slowly coming down, and then the flashlight is off, but then he gets it back on, and just bam.
Yeah,
it's almost like an inversion of that famous found footage kill in every movie where they get yanked away from the camera.
Yeah, it is.
Which even non-found footage stuff is doing now, which is kind of funny. But, okay, so the next morning there's a kind of funny scene where, because Weezer throughout this thing has been from the night before and into the morning, he's been reading a Punisher comic, which I looked up the issue for August 88. I've read that one. It's a Daredevil crossover.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not a great issue, but it's not one of the best ones. Like it's so funny because he's in Queens, but he's fighting Daredevil instead of Spider-Man. I don't get that, but but anyway, and the bad guy is like this dude who looks like a muscle-bound Alfred.
So found Alfred. Oh my god.
Yeah, he does. He does. He looks like Alfred, only with only ripped and on steroids. But he goes to what looks like a bag full of magazines to get another comic, and he's like, hey, Kevin, we'll get into your stash, and all these porno mags fall out.
Yeah, I thought this bit was quite funny.
Yeah, everyone, including the girls, are like going into his porn stash and embarrassing him.
Yeah, but I like how it sort of plays with like it thrown out. It seems like the worst kind of issues, like everything, and then he kind of just shrugs because he's got nothing like to come back with it, and then everybody starts reading them, and it was just like usually like someone freak out and and he seems to get really angry at everyone and storm off.
But he's just kind of like, oh, what else is there to do? And he just kind of breaks down in laughter because what else are you going to do?
Yeah, he's just like, come on, guys.
and then so Vanessa is out showering in the outdoor showers, which is one of those weird things I never quite figured out.
No, they're like a box that you stand outside in, isn't it? Because I thought it was one of those public ones at first.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like a box where you stand outside and you get and you get behind it. Like I know what it is, but it's like I never figured out the idea behind it. Is what I mean. It's like
I'm with you. So why isn't it indoors?
Yeah, we need to save money on lumber. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
But then she's in there and she looks down and she sees that someone is standing on the other side. She can see the work boots poking out under it. And so she freaks out, gets out of the shower, and she bumps into Kevin. And it's a bit of a fake out scare, but not a terrible one. And so they check where that guy was standing, who's Jason, obviously, and they see his boot prints. And they follow his boot prints, and they see that they came out of the woods and looked in through one of the cabin windows while they were sleeping the night before.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Which I thought was really creepy.
I think they play in that sort of way as well. Some of them like whatever, and then they're like, "No, seriously, someone watched us sleep. Isn't that weird?" So is it Kirby who kind of freaks out a little bit about it?
Yeah, I think most of them freak out about it a little bit.
Yeah, or maybe it's just one of them that was like, But yeah.
But then, it's the last day of camp, and we get this really silly speech that you always hear at high schools and shit about making friends and all that. And some of this is going to last forever from Duckworth. And Duckworth is like, hey, you guys can't be sitting around smoking pot. We need to break this place down. Go into town and buy this shit. And so they all go into town and split up, and then Kevin, Vanessa, and Sloane go to the cops, and we get these two cops, I swear, they are basically just the redneck cops from Last House on the Left, only they're not in the whole thing.
I kind of got, it's been so long since I've seen Last House, but I got almost the cops from, is it Halloween 4 or 5?
It's 5.
Yeah, but just without the ridiculous music over the top.
Oh, the cartoon sound effects.
Yeah.
Like they let the Foley guy go away. Yeah, that's all. Except the reason why I thought about that is because you have the older sheriff and then you had the younger deputy, and I'm like, okay, so that's Martin Cove. I guess actual police procedure does not exist in this dojo. But they dismiss it, and they do this interesting thing where they kind of try and scare them by sort of evoking the urban legend of Jason that has grown up, and they say that, well, according to legend, he didn't die and he lives in the woods. And sometimes he comes down to take a woman. He goes, hey, deputy, you saw a shack up there, didn't you? And he goes, yep, which is an interesting reference to Friday Part 2.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I like how that's one thing the script does, is that there's a bunch of different elements are kind of mentioned here and there about this. And this is a really smart reboot, because it's not just retelling the same story. It's taking elements of the different movies and blending them into this new mythology that's being built in a reasonably interesting way.
Yeah, which I think is always a good idea with remakes, instead of just rehashing the same story, especially with a long franchise like this, where you kind of get people who have an idea of the series as opposed to remembering one particular film in that series. That makes sense.
Yeah, or rehashing 4 separate movies in a series like the Friday remake did.
Yeah.
But no, so the cops are a washout, and I'm only mentioning this part because it's going to be important later, is that they meet this strange woman in town whose name is Linda King, and she's eccentric, and she's talking about how she lives in the woods near near the camp, and she lives on the road basically.
Mm.
And she lives near the camp. She says, "Oh, I should come visit you sometime." And she's missing an arm. Now, I thought what this script was going to do is because she mentions having she knew Pamela and stuff. She mentions, and I thought what was going to happen was going to turn out that she was like the survivor of that incident, that she lost her arm in the massacre. But that never comes up.
No, yeah, I was thinking something similar. That something like that would happen, or if the script went really crazy, that she might turn out to be Pamela, and she just had her arm like hacked off, not her head, and nobody realized.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
Same. Like, as I was saying it out loud, I was like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this character needed to be a little bit more prominent. Maybe fold some of the counselors into each other so that the character list is a little more manageable, and make her a little bit more important because she ends up playing a semi-key role in the finale.
Yeah.
Like, it's not huge, but she is a player in the finale, so it's like we get this really brief scene of her, and you get to the end, and I mean, I was following this pretty well, but I could see someone watching this movie going like, "Oh wait, her."
Yeah, I wonder if that fake arm is maybe just to keep her in some people's minds because of how small a role it is at this point. Although it'd be interesting if, because I thought the idea might be that she was supposed to be like the crazy Ralph sort of character. She's like, "Oh yeah, here's more of that legend. Don't go into the woods," and then
that's what this script needed. It needed Crazy Ralph.
Yeah,
it needed Crazy Ralph. Should have been in more movies.
Yeah, he should have been. He could have been the linchpin for it all.
He should have stuck around until at least part 4, the final chapter, and died in that one instead of part 2.
That would have been good.
Him and Creighton Duke should have gotten way more stuff to do.
Yeah.
But no. So, and while they're in town, basically Duckworth and the nurse decide they're going to play strip, go fish, and get high. And then they apparently run out of weed, and so Duckworth goes to raid Weezer's stash. It just reminds me of that 70s show episode where Red goes to try and steal condoms from Eric's underwear drawer.
Oh my god, I haven't seen that one.
And he's out there, and basically Jason finds him. He drags him off into the woods and impales him through the chest with a shovel, which was a pretty decent kill. And it's all shown from a distance to sort of keep his face out of frame. And it's playing like I think it's like a Talking Heads song over it, or a Cars song, because Nicole's listening to the Cars song, and that's why she doesn't hear anything.
Yeah,
but it's an interesting pick.
I thought it was an interesting pick as well. I kind of like the idea where it's like, because you get moments from her perspective, don't you? Where it's all like silently happening in the background.
Yeah. And what was actually really creepy is that when Duckworth gets dragged off, he sees Jason actually watching her through the window.
Yeah.
Which I just find that creepy for whatever reason. If I looked over and saw Jason looking through the window, I'd be like, well, depending on which Jason it is. I mean, if it's part 3 Jason, I would be like, what is Sloth from the Goonies doing here?
Do I have a chocolate bar?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd just like, well, this is clearly where I get murdered.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Duckworth dies, but he leaves Nicole alone for a very long time. In fact, there's a confusing bit later on. One of them says, "Oh, he killed Duckworth, he killed Nicole." And I'm like, wait a minute, Nicole died? But then she doesn't die until later.
Oh, I missed that. I wonder if that's from like...
It's in the middle of like when they're running around confused.
Yeah, they must have just clearly like moved her death at one point. Yes, and then forgot that they put it in.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. But so they're. I don't know if this is a first draft or not because it doesn't say. But they have, but basically that they like do a bunch of stuff during the day. Greg is like like I mentioned before, he's hitting golf balls into the lake, and he took the hockey mask with him from the camp, and he tosses the mask into the lake.
Yeah,
and it's floating on the water for a bit. And so they decide to have an indoor campfire because they know there's a weird guy watching them. And they put a bunch of candles on the ground and they arm themselves with baseball bats. And then in the middle of it, Brad and Amber leave. And then Amber decides, hey, I'm going to Princeton. You're not. This isn't going to work out. Let's break up. And so that happens, and Brad's kind of angry about it. And then there's this weird bit where Kirby gets high and randomly kisses Sloane.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice. Just said, okay, and shooting her down. I actually expected her and Sloane to almost get together at that point. I was like, oh, okay. And then, like, it doesn't happen. Like, interesting, random.
Yeah. And then Kevin, blows his chances with Vanessa. And then he actually ends up with Sloane after everyone goes to sleep, which I thought was kind of a nice little moment. And I bought into the brief little romance they had. Yeah,
same, because it seemed like just two people who just, a one-night stand, essentially.
Yeah.
Everybody was just...
It worked. Absolutely. And what's weird is that during this scene, right, there's a couple of songs that play. The first one that plays is the Guns N' Roses cover of Knocking on Heaven's Door, which is a bit of a fuck-up because that song did not get released until 1991.
Oh, no. That's terrible.
I'm like, yeah, that was on one of the Use Your Illusion albums, whichever one. Granted, it's a good cover, but yeah, you fucked up the date there.
Which is crazy because I like how is it Stand By Me plays?
Yeah, Stand By Me.
And you get the aside of like this was out in 1986 because of Stephen King's movie.
Film. Yeah, yeah, it was a hit too. So it would have been playing on the radio.
Yeah, that's one of the asides I enjoyed. Where he's like, "This is why this old song is there."
Yeah, and whether it would still been playing in '88, I don't know, but
that's true.
But no, eventually, Don't Dream It's Over starts playing, which is another Stephen King thing, because that popped up in the Stand miniseries.
Ah.
Yeah, it plays over the shots of the world falling into disarray after the superflu. It's actually one of the better parts of that miniseries.
Ah, cool.
So you have the Kevin Sloane sex scene, which I should mention, the character list at the beginning is very insistent that they're all 18.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, you don't need to be quite so upfront about that. We don't care that much.
Yeah. So I'm fine. The actors will be, the right age, of age. It's all cool. They're all 30 anyway.
Yeah, they'll all be like 35, 40.
Yeah.
And Duckworth will be played by a 60-year-old. Okay, so the next morning, they're at dawn. Weezer gets up. He goes out and decides to get high on top of the big, because they establish early on that there's a big plastic slide going down into the lake. And it's all rickety and isn't standing upright. And so he's smoking a bowl up there. And they mentioned that the mask is floating. And like they show the mask floating and then it cuts and it's gone, I think.
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
With the implication that Jason picked it up. And so he's up there, and we get the idea that Jason's watching him. And so he decides he's high, he's having a good time, he's going to slide down.
Yeah.
While he's sliding down, this kill is brutal, because I like this guy. It's like, ugh, but Jason shoves the machete up through the bottom of the slide, and he can't get out of the way in time. And it goes up through his crotch,
right into the hip bone.
Busts his pelvis and goes right up into the top of the hip bone, and he's like bleeding out and stuff. And he has to like get himself up off it. And he's like, he manages to yank himself off it, but then Jason pulls it out.
Yeah.
And then he slides down. And you just hear him screaming. I'm like, oh, this death scene is brutal. That's what I like about this, is that the death scenes aren't necessarily creative or, gag worthy or anything. Like, I mean, like joke gag.
Oh, yeah.
But they are brutal and like they have an impact.
Yeah. I really felt this one.
I think. Yeah. Like, ugh.
It's like, is there any coming back from that? When he's first trying to survive, it's like, is it? Oh, I would not like to be that dude.
Yeah, no, he's like pulling. The fact that he manages to pull himself off the machete is just. Oh, by the way, there was a shot earlier where they showed the stump where the machete was left, and it got picked up.
Oh yeah.
And okay, so he slides into the lake, bleeding out. We don't find out what happens to him yet, but basically what happens is that Brad and Amber, they walk out to the archery range, so they're separated from everyone else, and they make up and they're okay with each other, but they do agree to the breakup, and it's kind of this nice sort of characters maturing moment. And it works. It's this nice little moment. And then the shit hits the fan. Kevin and the rest, they find Weezer's hacked up body floating in the lake. It's just been hacked to absolute pieces.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh crap, we have to do something. And they're like, he's like, we have to get the gun. He was like, we have to get the, and Greg is like, no, I got the keys to the truck. Let's just get out of here. He was like, no, give me the keys so we can go get the gun from the that's locked in Duckworth's desk. And they're arguing over it. And then I think it's Kirby who says, hey, why is there a goalie standing over there?
Yeah. I'm sure that's a line in one of the other Fridays, isn't it?
Well, the only one I can think of is Freddy versus Jason, where the goalie was pissed about something.
That must be the one I'm thinking of. I was just like, I like the fact they call him a goalie.
And he's standing there, and like there's smoke from the campfire, like blowing around. He's at a distance, so you can't quite see him. It's a nice, interesting shot. And then he's running behind the cabin, so they can't see him.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting because does this happen during the day?
Yeah, it's during the day.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting. A lot of this takes place in daytime as well.
Which I thought was a good choice because we've seen the nighttime Jason in every other movie.
So we rarely see him do stuff during the day. And I thought it was just really interesting. That image of him stood in the smoke, in my head, looked like it'd be a really cool, like, first wide proper shot of Jason in the mask.
Yeah, although we don't get that.
Oh, that's true.
Because it's frames that you don't quite... you get the idea that he's standing there in the hockey mask, but you don't quite get a long look at him because of this build-up that the script is doing.
Yeah.
And so he's running, and like he's like using the cabins as cover so they can't keep a bead on him, and then he ends up with the group. He goes straight for Greg because this is the guy he's pissed off at, and he impales him with the machete, and like Greg like tries to grab it, but then Jason pulls it out and it slices up his hands.
Oh, that reminded me. This was the other moment in my head that I thought, oh, this might be one of the 3D moments.
Yeah, it might have been.
Stabs him to the gut and had the like it would come out to the screen. Whatever. This and the machete down the slide. I thought the two images in my head of this script that I thought, oh, these would make horrifying 3D moments.
Yeah, that might actually work in 3D. But and then so Sloane and Vanessa try and help Greg. They like try and tie off his arms and stuff, although he's got a hole in him, so that wouldn't really help. But
yeah, forget the gaping stomach wound.
And Jason starts to go with them, and Kevin, who froze up earlier when that kid was about to drown, he freezes up again, but he comes out of it just in time to save them by chucking rocks at Jason. And he basically, and Jason comes and he more or less ended up saving them by sacrificing his life because Jason chases him down, grabs him, and smashes him up against a tree, breaking his spine, and then hacks him in the face with the machete and kills him. Now that was a shocking moment on my first read of this because it's like he was basically the lead and I was kind of pulling for him.
Yeah, same.
And now he's dead. It's like, holy shit.
And quite brutal. If I remember correctly, it's almost the sleeping bag kill, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost
on the floor, grabs his foot, just ruins him.
Yeah, it's like part 7, except it's brutal and not censored.
Yeah, they can finally get away with this time.
Yeah, and so Kirby runs off and gets into a canoe. And Jason, like, throws a huge rock into the canoe and, like, busts the bottom open with it and just leaves her there to drown, which I thought was a kind of nice little minimalist thing. Like, she doesn't die at this point.
Yeah. I was surprised on this one where it goes slightly differently to what I thought. Because I remember in the remake, one of the things they had in their script at some point was the Willow Ford character was supposed to drown. Like, she would be, when she crashes the boat, instead of hiding under the pier, the original idea was something about she'd stay in the lake and she'd be too scared to come out of the water. So anytime she reached the side, Jason would be there, and then she eventually runs out of energy and drowns.
Yeah, I remember reading about that, but they changed it.
Yeah, so they changed it to her getting stuck because they're like, this takes way too long.
But, I mean, that would have been so cool if they did that, because I actually kind of like that boat scene. Like, I like how the guy just gets the arrow in the face out of nowhere. Like, that's one of the little bits in that movie I really like. But no, so yeah, like, he leaves her there to drown. Now, granted, she can swim, but I just like the idea of Jason just busting the canoe open and going, well, that happened.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll deal with you later. And Greg actually gets up and tries to stagger away, but he falls to the ground dead. And he's like, because he got up and walked a bit, he's actually far away from where the rest of them are.
Mm.
So Sloane and Vanessa actually managed to get away. Jason lost sight of them. And so they go to Duckworth's cabin and they break into the desk to get the gun, but then they find it has a trigger lock on it.
Yeah.
So because what happens is that they decided, okay, we can go get the keys and leave. We can bust open the desk to get the gun and not need the keys, but then, there's no trigger guards. They're like, oh, great, we're going to have to go get the keys anyways. And
Yeah.
because Vanessa, it's established, has asthma, she starts having an asthma attack.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting and really kind of like creepy. So I've had a few friends with asthma, and like when they start having an attack, it's just, that's it. You're like, you can't do anything.
And I thought it was interesting because it adds a little bit more tension to this because you don't know when that's going to happen with her.
Mm.
And then so while this is going, while they're in that cabin, Brad and Amber come back and they're walking across the campfire and the radio's still playing. And I think it's around this point where Jason just stomps it. So no more music.
Yeah, pretty much just after I think they start realizing something's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, because Sloane sneaks out and tries to warn them of what's going on. And then Amber and they sort of, it's like they kind of split up, I think. And Amber was going back to her cabin. They go to get her, and then she gets a machete embedded in her shoulder. And like Brad distracts Jason, and Jason pulls it out and leaves her to chase after them. And they go and hide in the cabinets in the mess hall. And Jason's walking in, and they're hiding, and they have to keep quiet. But then he leaves, and then Nurse Nicole shows up alive. It's during that part where Sloane's warning Brad and Amber. She's like, oh, he killed Nicole. And it's like, wait a minute. I have to go reread the last few pages, make sure I didn't miss that.
Yeah, so he killed Nicole as she walks in. Never mind.
Yeah, and so they have to keep, and so basically they have to keep quiet in the cabinets while she dies. And this was making me think of Jurassic Park with the Velociraptors.
Yeah.
And so they return to after Jason leaves, they go to Duckworth's cabin to get Vanessa, and so Vanessa decides she's going to be the one to go get the keys off Greg's corpse. Now that's a scene that happens in the next script too, which is bizarre. And actually nothing happens here. Like you're expecting Jason to show up, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then it's established that Kirby got out of the boat, and she's hiding on the floating dock out in the lake, and she's hiding under some life vests, which is actually a pretty smart tactic, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, so I thought that was a good idea.
And then they all decide they get in the truck and drive off, except for Kirby, whom they can't convince to leave to swim over to them. Jason appears in the middle of the road, and then they don't hit him head on. They turn aside and they glance off him, and he goes flying. And basically, you can appear in the middle of the road and stop the car in the game. It's actually kind of fun.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
And like the windshield gets broken, and they're all trying to climb out as Jason gets up again, but he grabs Amber, drags her through the broken windshield, tearing her up, and then just crushes her skull. And that is just another wow moment.
Yeah, really brutal.
Because once again, she's one of the leads, kind of. So it's like, I wasn't expecting you to die here.
Yeah. Although, one of the things I thought is weird, although it might have been just a worry, is that when she gets the machete through the shoulder, she goes really blasé.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I just was like, huh. Which is very much her reaction. You'd need some really good acting to pull that off.
And a director who knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so Brad is just super pissed. He shoots Jason with he just basically shoots the gun at Jason until it's out of bullets, but doesn't do anything.
Yeah. And one of those things I quite liked is like him emptying the clips, because usually you get like the one or two shots and then everybody walks off.
Yeah. We only loaded two bullets into the gun.
So come on,
but then it gets to nighttime again. Because they light a campfire, and they lure Jason to the fire, and then Brad comes out of hiding and like hits him in the back with the axe.
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
And he knocks him into the fire, and even that doesn't faze Jason. And so they go back to Duckworth's cabin to find more bullets, but there are no more. And they go into the shore lake, and they're trying to convince Kirby to swim to shore. And then Jason emerges from the woods again, and he's dragging Duckworth's like decaying body with him. And then before he sees them, Brad and Amber, they jump into a shed. And then Sloane, who's too far from cover, she just drops down into the water. She drops down onto the shore, and right next to Weezer's chopped up, mangled corpse. And this is just ugh.
Yeah, this is kind of, reminds me a bit of like The Hills of Eyes kind of thing in the remake, where like hiding the corpses.
Oh yeah, and The Descent.
Yes. Yeah, I really like this bit.
And she's like playing dead, and she's looking over at Jason, and Jason just is staring at her with the black empty eye holes. And it's like he's kind of figured out what's going on, but he hasn't quite yet. He's walking over, and he's trying to, and he's like he's about to do something to her. He grabs Weezer's corpse too, and then Kirby jumps off the floating deck onto the other side and splashes in the water to distract Jason. And then Jason just walks into the water with the corpses and goes under.
Yeah. And then, I really like how this plays out. So when he goes under and you got the bubbles coming up as like almost the shark fin of Jason.
And then it's like a shark fin, and Kirby's desperately trying to swim for shore at this point, and then he pulls her down, and she looks around, and she sees all the bodies of all the victims like floating in the weeds. And this is one of the things I like about this script, is that it's Jason's pretty much supernatural in this version, but they play it relatively subtly. Because like you get the implication that he drags the bodies into the lake, and that somehow revives him because he comes out of the lake after that. Next time they see him, he's much stronger. And the idea is that every time he dies, he comes back only stronger. And I felt like that worked because they play around this idea of like, ooh, maybe he is still alive because no one found the body. And Sloane sarcastically, oh, well, people saw him die, even his own mother thought he was dead. That didn't make any sense. So it's taking things from the original series that didn't make sense because they were always retconning shit.
Yeah.
And actually using them and playing them into this new thing they're setting up. But they don't do too much with it. It's not Jason Goes to Hell where he's suddenly a worm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like how this is. I like how this is. Like I said before, this is kind of a smart reboot.
Definitely. Really feeling this one. The more we even talk about it.
Yeah, and Sloane, Brad, and Vanessa, they decide to circle the lake because they played the video game and they know if they take the boat, it's just going to get flipped over. Especially with this Jason. Especially with this Jason, because he can swim pretty fast, I'm guessing. He's probably the fastest swimmer. Because there's a thing in that game where Jason, the farther up you go in the sequels, like the more like the faster he swims.
All right.
Yeah, and he moves faster in the lake than he does on shore, regardless. But still, but no. So they circle the lake and they end up in the old campground again, and Jason emerges from the woods and they run and they end up in the backyard of Linda King's house, and there's a dog barking there. And so they managed to get a call into the police for once, a phone in Friday the 13th that actually works.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. And like earlier, it's like the phones didn't work because they were like disconnected, I think, or it's like they never worked at the camp or something like that. They make a joke about that. Yeah,
one of the two, isn't it? They either never work or they cut them off when the season ends or something.
Yeah, something like that. Well, the season ends one was mentioned in the next one, for sure.
Yeah, I get confused with that one.
Yeah. And, well, there's a few things in that are oddly similar to this, which we'll talk about. But, so they get there, they call the police, and they're a few minutes out, and Linda's like, that charm bracelet, I know that, with the implication being it belonged to Pamela.
Yeah, that's what I took.
And then Jason bursts through the door like the Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah.
And he grabs Linda, rips her severed arm off, starts beating her with it. And then Brad gets him in the back with the axe, and Sloane stabs him a bunch of times with a butcher knife. And Vanessa starts having another asthma attack, and then Jason grabs Sloane and starts choking her, and she drops the knife. Linda, who's still alive, grabs it, starts stabbing him behind the knee, and then he stomps her head in, which you can also do in the game. Brad grabs Linda's shotgun, which he mentions has birdshot in. He fires it into the back of his head, takes a nail gun to his spine, and finishes him off with a fire poker through the eye. And you can hear it hit the back of his skull. And there's a moment where Jason does seem to recognize the bracelet in the midst of all that.
Yeah, it just takes a second, doesn't he? This is where I thought something much more was going to happen. At first, I got a Texas Chainsaw vibe of like, oh god, is this woman going to be in on it?
Do your thing, cuz.
Yeah. But I really liked how she turned out to be there. Almost like Jason is a nuisance that she deals with, like foxes or coyotes or something.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. And okay, so, and here's where it gets, I'm not really sure about this transition because it transitions and they're in the back of an ambulance. And for some reason, they're now on Main Street. Like, they're just parked on Main Street going to get interviewed by the cops. I'm like, wouldn't this happen at the scene?
Yeah, that was a bit weird because I started reading it as if it was at the scene, but I'm just flicking through again. It's like, it is on the Main Street. Like,
yeah. And then they're talking to the sheriff and they're talking, and while this is happening, the morgue van that's taking Jason's corpse away starts to, slow down and swerve off the road. And as Sloane, for the first time, says Jason's full name, she goes, his name was Jason Voorhees. Jason bursts out of the back of the blood soaked inside of the van. He's got a bone saw. And you get the first full on, full frame look at Jason. And he just goes to town with this bone saw. He's slitting cops' throats. He just runs up to Brad, splits his head open with it, which was another shocking moment.
Yeah, same.
The deputy gets his throat slashed. Vanessa runs in one direction. Sloane runs in the other. Sloane gets stuck in the back of the cop car because she forgot that you can't open them from the inside. And there's all this cop killing carnage where Jason's just killing all these cops and there's a local team shows up and Jason takes the time out to kill that guy. And then Vanessa takes this moment to go help Sloane get out of the back of the car. Then Jason slams her head in, knocks her out for a bit, busts the door open, pulls Sloane out. She distracts him with the bracelet and he figures out what's belonging to his mother. And so he holds it in his hand and is looking at it. She reaches up, takes his mask off. And she sees not only is he butt ugly, but he has this look of psychotic glee on his face.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting and kind of funky.
Which I thought was cool when Jason is about to break out of his trance there, and Vanessa picks a shotgun up that one of the cops dropped, blows half his head off, grabs car keys off a dead officer, and then they get into the car. He starts getting up, so they back up, knock him over, run him over, and just fucking drive away. And I like that because it's for once in the Friday the 13th film, they don't try to kill Jason. They just drive the hell away. I
did like that because it's always the one thing you seem to do in a lot of these videos. It's like, just go. And they did.
And then he gets up, puts his mask on, and walks down Main Street like he's the sheriff. And I like this scene because, holy shit, Jason just became the Terminator.
Yeah. It's just this is the carnage that you want to see Jason do all in one scene.
It's I never knew I wanted to see Jason engage in this much carnage. And I'm like, yes. It's this is like Commando when Arnold has the freaking buzz saws and stuff just going,
yeah, it is.
And the police station scene in Terminator.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I have no idea whether Paramount would have paid for this or not, but it's a cool idea. And so then we get a post-credit scene where it's Crystal Lake, the town of Crystal Lake in winter. It's abandoned, and you see Jason's boot prints in the snow because we have to keep teasing this idea of Jason in the snow for some reason.
Yeah, they seem to have been wanting to do this. Someone really wants to do that story of Jason in the snow, don't they?
Because that was the pitch for the sequel to the remake. Was Jason in the snow, and it pops up here, and they're talking about adding weather effects to the game, which is just going to fuck everything up, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah.
This game already glitches out all the time. We don't need fucking rain making it lag.
No.
But yeah, so yeah, on the whole, I really liked this Nick Antosca draft.
Yeah, same. I actually really liked it. I like how the characters are likable. The deaths are brutal. For most of this, you don't really root for Jason. It feels to me almost like you finally root for your characters.
Yeah. You're rooting for Jason just a little bit, especially
Oh,
at
yeah.
that end where it's just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, holy shit, oh, he just split that guy's head in half with a bone saw. I'm like, oh crap, but no, for the most part, he is the bad guy, and you don't want to see these people die. Like with Greg, it's like, okay, that's inevitable,
Yeah.
but it's like, and nobody you expect to live lives. Like the Virgin dies,
Yeah.
the main character dies, his brother dies, his girlfriend dies. It's like that's the people you were expecting to live.
Yeah. So the cheerleader and the Saki girl survive.
And the fact that there's 2 survivors, I think, is actually pretty clever.
Yeah, that's something you don't quite get a lot of these days.
Now, granted, it would have been more unusual if it was a guy who lived.
That's true.
Which they never seem to want to do. But it's one of those things where it's kind of like, whatever. I mean, it's a final girl thing, but the 2 final girls thing is different enough. And also, I was kind of imagining the stoner as being the stoner from Cabin in the Woods.
Yes. I was trying to think whose face I was putting on him, and it was him. Yes.
Yeah, it's like only he doesn't try to beat up Jason with a bong.
No.
No, that would have been too silly for this script. So basically what happened with this script is that Antosca wrote it, Bruckner was happy with it and wanted to direct it, and I believe one of them mentioned in an interview that there was a regime change at Paramount and the new producers didn't want to do this version, so they scrapped it. And David Bruckner left. And they hired on Aaron Guzikowski, who had the big thing he's still known for was Prisoners with Hugh Jackman. He wrote that movie.
All right.
Which is it's a really strong psychological thriller, and it's pretty dark and intense, and you can actually see certain elements of that. If you see the movie, you will start recognizing things from this draft of his script.
Oh, okay.
In that movie, like that scene in the living room with the noose feels like it could have been in that movie. Pamela is played similarly to a character from that movie. And just the overall kind of unpleasant, bleak tone is very Prisoners, but Prisoners is much better than this.
Oh, that's good to know.
And the director of that movie has moved on to do Blade Runner.
Huh. Well, there we go.
And is supposed to do Dune sometime in the near future.
Oh, that'd be interesting. See what happens to Dune this time.
Jake Gyllenhaal as
Paul
Atreides.
I almost said as the Baron, because that'd just be so weird.
No, that's from Pan.
Yeah. Oh my God, Pan.
I didn't see Pan. I just read about it. No, I'm not watching that.
Oh my God, don't. It's got the weirdest rendition of Smells Like Teen Spirit I've ever seen.
Yeah, I heard about that. But moving on to Aaron Guzikowski's script. It's undated, but if you check the document properties, it does say it's a first draft, and I believe the date in the document properties is sometime in 2016. Huh. And so the overall plot summary of this is that it's both a prequel and it's a prequel remake of the original with a sequel tacked on and a whole bunch of elements. So the basic plot is that it starts in 1977. And you get introduced to Jason, who's in the camp, the 2 daughters of the people who own the camp, Annie and Mary, who are like the leads. You get kind of a glimpse into Jason's relationship with his parents. You have a subplot with his father being a serial killer, which I have a lot to say about that. Don't get me wrong. I bet. Yeah. And then, so basically there's an incident where a bunch of the teenagers are being heavily irresponsible. And drag him out and they take him out to the island in the middle of the lake, and he runs off, and they assume he drowns, and it gets covered up. And then it cuts to 3 years later, and Pamela finds out and goes on a rampage. And maybe Jason is supernatural and psychically communicating with her, maybe not. And so it becomes a remake of the original, essentially. And then Jason shows up for the last 20 to 30 pages, says hi. And that's basically the script.
Yeah,
the script is weird. And to start from the beginning, I have to talk about the title again, because these both have weird titles. This one is called Friday the 13th, Part 13. Do we have a 12? Yeah, because including the remake, there's 12 movies.
Of course there would be.
But that doesn't really make sense, because as a title, this doesn't make sense, because the 12th movie was a remake.
Yeah.
Freddy versus Jason is kind of in its own weird continuity. And this in itself is a remake / prequel / what the hell, so how is this part 13?
Maybe they're just trying to get the numbers up so it'll match up with Red Dwarf.
The cat versus Ace Rimmer versus Jason.
Oh god. I was thinking more just like the VHS they get, which is like part 249.
Yeah. But no, me and the small amount of Red Dwarf I've watched. But so yeah, you start this script off with just a weird scene, all right, where it establishes right at the beginning that this is the summer of 1977, and weirdly no Star Wars references.
Shameful.
Yeah. I mean, hell, the freaking 80s script mentioned Action Park, which is this weird bit of 80s trivia. which is this park which had really terrible safety standards and people were always getting injured.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like there was a slide where it was this really long water slide and you went down it, and the idea was that it was so long you were going so fast there was like a loop-de-loop at the end you would go through and people would break their arms in that.
Oh.
Okay, so the scene we see these two counselors named Jeff and Sandra, who are named after the characters from part 2.
Yeah, that's a good pull.
And Jeff even mentions, "Hey, I used to go to Packanack, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Ha, not funny, not clever." And so they're walking out there, and they go to this fire lookout tower because this is wrong turn for some reason. And then Sandra's like, "Oh, there's this park ranger I'm friendly with who I give his son swimming lessons. Hint, hint. Remember that for later, because I feel sorry for his kid, even though he's kind of creepy. So he gave me these. So I got him to give me these keys to this lookout tower. So they climb up there, and they're about to make out, and there's some not terribly good dialogue. And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm afraid of heights." And he goes like, "Oh, I knew I should have brought Barry out here." And I'm like, if she's like trying to lure you by saying she should have brought another guy out here, just leave her.
Yeah.
Just fucking run away, leave her in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
And so they're up there. And so they're up there smoking pot and making out, and then the park ranger shows up and starts climbing up. And for some reason, Jeff tries to climb down while the dude's climbing up.
I don't think he knows how ladders work.
No, he doesn't. He thinks this is chutes and ladders, but it's just ladders.
Yeah.
And so the dude's climbing up, and then Sandra sees that this guy has got the potato sack on his head, presumably with 2 eye holes. And oh no, he cuts it like Jeff's legs or something with some sort of weapon until he falls off and dies.
Yeah.
And then and Sandra's trying to hold the trap door shut, but he bursts and pulls her down, and you just hear her fall to the ground, which is kind of cool.
So I think that would look pretty cool. But yeah, so I assumed this was our Jason at first.
But no, it's not. He climbs up, and you see the name tag on his uniform says E. Voorhees, so he's Elias Voorhees, Jason's father, who is one of those things they keep trying to bring him into the series, and he just never comes in. It just never happens because he was supposed to be in the like the little sequel hook at the end of part 6.
Yeah, because I remember hearing about that, and it's almost a running joke on how often he is not in these movies.
And they talked about bringing him back quite a few more times. In fact, I think they were supposed to do something with him in Goes to Hell, but they didn't. And I think one of the Freddy versus Jasons might have mentioned him. He shows up in a flashback in one of those scripts, actually, now.
Oh, yeah.
Because it turns out that Elias and Pamela were Elm Street parents, which is stupid. But that's a different script. But he was supposed to be at the ending of part 6, but then they had to reshoot a bunch of things to add more kills, and so the Gravedigger, who was also in that scene, gets killed off earlier, so they had to cut it. But no, so he's a serial killer in this. I'm just going to say this now. Nothing about this character makes any goddamn sense.
Right? I was thinking that, the more I was reading it, it's just he's not even consistent with himself in not making sense.
No, because he's a killer until he's not. But he kind of is, and then he dies, and it's maybe something supernatural happened, and it's never explained.
Yeah. just various other like weird things. Because doesn't he like start becoming a killer when Pamela's pregnant? And then they
Well,
mention like he tried to kill Jason in the womb.
yeah, and it's like, but then he's like doesn't seem to do anything to them. He's just killing random people for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's never explored. And it seems really weird that Pamela would stay with this man after he tried killing Jason, and then he gave up after Jason was born.
Yeah, like why stop?
Yeah.
Yeah, go into the maternity ward like you're freaking Rutger Hauer from Hobo with a Shotgun. Because that's just what I'm imagining, just this slovenly hobo. But okay, so we get to we cut to Camp Crystal Lake and we meet Annie and Mary Christie, who they're the teenage daughters of the camp's owners. They're a couple years apart. Annie is a classic overachiever. She's training for Olympic swimming, and she's got a little. We established that she has a bionic woman lunchbox full of her athlete drugs. Or uppers.
Yeah.
That's a weird pop culture reference to make.
Yeah.
And Mary is a little bitch who we see her bullying this girl, trying to make her take off Jason's mask and kiss him because Jason, he's a 16-year-old camper. Which, this whole 16 thing doesn't work for me because he acts like he's a lot younger and Pamela treats him like he's a lot younger. Like, it's almost kind of like an offhand thing.
Yeah, pretty much, because I was picturing him being much younger when reading this. Really didn't feel like he was a 16-year-old kid.
It's like they're trying to justify him being so damn big when he shows up again at the end. Like, oh, he's older, so that's why he gets like a growth spurt, or I don't know. Because Jason is another thing in this script that makes no goddamn sense because they can't make up their minds what they want him to be. But we'll get to that. But okay, So Mary is being a bitch to this girl, Becky, which is important because it sets up something that doesn't make any sense later.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about. And Jason's just sitting there on the pier. He's been waiting for ages because Sandra was supposed to give him swimming lessons, but she didn't show up. And then Annie's like, is like, hey, cut it out. Like, Becky actually like punches Mary in the face, I think, and she's like, oh, I'm telling my parents, and you're getting fired and kicked out. And then Annie's like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Like, but Annie, she punched me in the face. She's like, you got what you deserved, bitch.
Yeah. So you don't care about me.
So already I don't care about this character.
Yeah.
And there's nothing interesting at all about Annie to make me give a shit. Oh, like they try later, but she's just a blank slate.
Yeah, she's very much like the blank slate.
And all like the character development stuff with her actually happens off screen almost, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But no, so she takes Jason to go find Pamela, who's working as a cook, and there's this other cook named Victor, whom it's kind of established he has sort of a thing for Pamela, but that doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that they wanted Bette Midler to play Pamela in this.
Oh, really?
Which I can kind of see that working the way she's played here.
Yeah.
She can actually act when she gives a shit. But she's in a lot of just shitty movies that aren't very good. But okay, so we see her like walking Jason home, and she assumes that Sandra and Jeff like hitchhiked to a Who concert. And I'm like, okay, so there's a Who concert in the middle of the woods in New Jersey.
Yep, I mean,
and so we see Pamela and Jason walking home because they apparently live like 10 feet away from the camp. And we get this idea that Jason is like psychically communicating to Pamela because it's established that he's mute and he can't talk.
Yeah, I kind of assumed something that she was just talking and like he just doesn't communicate. And she's just filling in all the blanks herself, like projecting onto.
That's possible, but something happens later on. A couple things happen later on in this thing, which don't really gel with that.
Yeah,
and also it's established he's wearing a medical mask, which I assumed was like a surgeon's mask, but they say it has eye holes, so that's not what it is.
Yeah, because I imagined a surgeon's mask as well, but I guess it's just a big old white mask over his face.
Yeah, but I was picturing it as a surgeon's mask, which makes the most sense. But like we get this, but she talks about like his father. We get the idea that he doesn't like his father, but his father never seems to do anything to him.
No.
And then okay, we see that Itsy Bitsy Spider, the lyrics to that song are framed on the wall of his bedroom. And earlier on, when Elias was killing those two, he was humming Itsy Bitsy Spider. And I don't know what that's meant to be implying. I'll talk about that later because that comes back again. But we get this kind of interesting scene where Jason's kind of in shadows with his mask off, and she's like, and like Pamela's using a humidifier to help him breathe. Which I thought that was kind of an interesting scene. Like, this is one of the things I like about this script is their relationship is actually kind of interesting. Like the sort of bond they have.
Yeah, it's kind of touchy with him and Pamela. You get this real sense of them being like a doting mother who loves her son like unconditionally.
Yeah, and but the problem is that we only see like one or two little scenes with that, and the rest of it is her talking about it. Because show don't tell does not exist in this script's universe.
Yeah.
And okay, here's a really weird kind of unintentionally funny part where like you see Elias wanders out of the woods in his bloody uniform and he sees Mary and he's like, oh, what the fuck? And then just runs away. And then he shows up at the house later just in his underwear and Pamela's like, what happened? And he just walks into the bathroom and locks the door. And I'm like, is this a sitcom now?
Is this a frequent occurrence in this house?
And so the next day, Mary blows off the swimming lessons because Annie was like, Mary, as punishment, you're going to have to fill in for Sandra. But Mary's a little bitch and blows it off. And then Annie's going to help Jason. And it was established earlier that she was supposed to go party with her boyfriend and a couple other counselors, but whatever. But like she's teaching Jason how to swim, and it's actually going fairly well. And then Jason flounders and grabs her arm too tightly and bruises it. And then the boyfriend Barry shows up in a motorboat with like 3 or 4 other people whom I couldn't tell apart, and I can't even remember their names now.
No, same.
Which is a problem. It's a real come down from the Antosca script where you have these fairly memorable characters, and now these people who are just there. And like they're drinking, and so they're gonna go to this island in the lake called Big Brick. And they talk her into going along and taking Jason. It's like, why are you listening to these people?
Yeah.
So they get in the boat and they go to the island, and then they stop the boat, and then suddenly okay, Barry has a Super 8 camera, and he just grabs Jason's mask off and starts filming him. Now you don't see Jason's face here. And he runs off onto the island. And he's like, Barry, what the fuck? He's like, well, we dropped acid before we got in the boat. And I'm like, is this how people on acid act? Like, can they drive a boat?
Yes. Does it become very incoherent at this point?
Yeah, like, how did you get to whatever?
Yeah.
And so they go wandering around the island looking for Jason. And one of them sees like sees like an ice skate hanging from a tree. And go like, the locals play hockey here when the lake's frozen over in winter because we need this justification for the hockey mask later on.
Yeah.
And then Barry's got his Super 8 camera and he's filming again. He sees like a shape in the water, which then sinks, and they assume that's Jason drowning. And I never am sure what actually happened here as the script goes on.
No, same, because it seems to be a random shape, and then at certain points, it seems to be implied that is Jason, and then at other points, it seems that it's not.
At other points, it seems like he just survived on the island.
Yeah.
He was just stranded on the island. There's this whole thing where earlier on where Annie said, "Oh, if you overcome your fear of the water, then I think you could be a strong swimmer and swim all the way across the lake." And that's implied to be important for what happens when Jason finally comes back in this thing.
Nice.
And so they assume Jason drowned, and so they go back to camp, and she talks to her mother. Annie talks to her mother, Andrea, and she says, well, you got a bright future ahead of you, so don't mention this. Tell your friend to get rid of the mask and get rid of the film, and just go about your life. And if you ever feel guilty, just keep swimming, because now I'm imagining Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah, because she's a big
or I'm just imagining her mother's just literally Dory.
Yeah. It just keeps.
And so you get Annie at her house, at her cabin. She takes a few drugs, and then Pamela shows up, and she asks him about Jason, and he's like, "Oh no, I didn't see him, and maybe he didn't come today." And she was like, "Oh no, Jason came in," and then they keep talking. Then she has like this dinner bell, and she's like, "Oh, when Jason was a kid, he used to wander off and explore the woods because he took after his father, and I'd have to ring this bell to bring him back in, and so he knows these woods better than anyone, which is important later."
Yeah.
Why couldn't we get the idea of the bell with just one of those scenes between Jason and Pamela, other than the fact that the bell is important for one little scene right at the end of the script?
Mm. Yeah, and even though the bell comes into play in this scene later, I don't think this explanation is necessary as well.
No, it's not. And so Annie goes out to swim, and the guilt sets in as she hears the bell ringing.
Mm.
Then we cut to Barry and company and all the boring, faceless people sitting around the campfire. And he's like, "Oh, by the way, I went and developed this film, and then I watched it in the mess hall." He's like, "Yeah, I definitely saw Jason drown there." And he's about to throw the mask into the fire, and then Elias shows up and says, "Hey, we got to put out this forest fire." And there's a moment actually earlier on in the camp where they point out there's a creepy poster of Smokey the Bear. No, wait, it was in the lookout tower.
Yeah.
I'm like, is Smokey the Bear considered creepy? Is this one of those weird things that people are creeped out by, like clowns, where I'm like, I really don't get it?
Yeah, it must be, I think.
But no, and then it's like, and then he's about to throw the mask in the fire when Elias shows up, and so he's escorting them into the woods, and he's like, "Wait a minute, the camp's that way," and then he turns around, cuts Barry along the arm, and just hacks the other two's throats in like one move.
Mm.
And then he like puts the knife in Barry's hand, and so he leads them to like the remains of Jeff and Sandra, which are hanging up in the tree.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You killed all." He's looking at the kid as he's dying from his wrist wound. He goes, "Well, you killed your friends." And he puts the knife in his hand and then frames him.
Mm.
Cut to 3 years later.
Oh, that was meaningless.
Yeah, I'm like, why did he frame them? Like, no one would have found Jeff and Sandra if he didn't do that.
Yeah. He just gets so freaked out when he saw Mary. He's like, "Gotta cover my tracks. I'll frame someone."
Like, what the hell is going on? Like, okay, so it cuts 3 years later, and apparently after the killings, the Christies closed down the camp, and then this year is the first year open again. It's an all-girls camp. Mm. Mary is now older and responsible, so she had a bunch of character development we didn't get to see off camera.
Yep.
And apparently she's now in a lesbian relationship with Becky, the girl she was being bitchy towards in the first part of the script. So I'm like, well, this is out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah. This was the thing I was going to mention about the other one, like where Kirby kisses the girl. Like, was this a studio mandate? It's like, there must be a lesbian character in this.
I don't know.
It just seemed weird that both scripts went that way.
Yeah, it is. It is very odd. It's like, and it's tacked on in both of them. Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so that's going on, and then we get the big closing down of camp scene because God forbid kids die in this script.
Mm.
Every Friday the 13th has fewer balls than Sleepaway Camp in more ways than one, actually. But but no, Pamela's talking to Victor, another cook, and here we get more backstory. And she's talking about how she can still hear Jason talking to her, and that there's something she needs to see in the fire tower. And then she mentions that she was only up there once when Jason was conceived. Like, they went up there to bang. And she became pregnant, and then Elias went crazy. He became crazy and violent, but then after Jason disappeared, he got better. And Victor's going like, he's like, "I like this woman. What the hell is going on?"
Yeah.
What am I getting into? I did not spot the crazy pussy very well. But,
so maybe she'll get better if Elias is out the picture.
And so, okay, Mary and Becky, a couple of other girl counselors, and which I can't remember their names, and a bunch of boy counselors from Packanack show up, and they decide to go to party at the closed campground, and they're taking shrooms because we need to one up the kind of drugs they use because
reasons.
Because in the last one it was weed, and now it's acid and shrooms. And so okay.
One of these guys is called Tommy, who I wondered if he was supposed to be their Tommy Jarvis at first.
But he's not. He's just a drug dealer.
Yeah.
I only remember he's Tommy because of Tommy, and I remember Roy because they go out of your way like 3 times to mention that he's fat.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, he's the fat one, Tommy's the drugs one, and the rest, like, I think there's one named Kevin because that name carried over.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay, so they're partying, and then Elias is climbing up in the lookout tower, and he's acting normal now, and he's like, if you're up there, you're trespassing, and Pamela's up there, and Barry's backpack is there because Elias kept this stuff. It's got Jason's mask and the film inside, so she knows Elias knew something, so she slams the door on his fingers and cuts off his hand, and she's speaking in Jason's voice, saying, kill her, mommy, kill her. Kill him, mommy, kill him, and then lets him fall to his death.
Lots of people fall from this tower. I just realized.
Yeah, this script is obsessed with this tower.
Yeah.
He comes back again.
Yeah, it does.
And so, okay, Elias was incredibly pointless.
Mm.
And okay, it seems what this is implying is that Jason is somehow communicating with his mother and told her to go there and then told her to kill Elias.
Yeah.
Is that what's going on? So is Jason dead? He's either dead or he's still alive on the island. The script never makes up its mind which.
No, and it wasn't really clear to me when I was reading it, actually. Because I just thought she just snapped and she was like, okay, so she just randomly found this stuff. I assume she went there because she was kind of like, oh, that's where Jason's conceived. You know, she's trying to say like, oh, Jason wants me to see something, but I figure it's just crazy woman who's going back to like that time when she conceived her son. And she finds this stuff and then like just goes insane and murders our killer.
Yeah. I feel like Elias is only a killer in this because someone mandated you need a body count and you need to start quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that really feels like that.
Like, I feel like if Guzikowski was writing this, he would have just had Pamela go crazy and have Jason show up.
I think you'd be right.
Yeah, but I feel like there was some studio mandates in there. Well, okay, and she finds the Super 8 film, and she looks at the little frames in it in the light, and she sees Annie's face. She goes to the camp, puts it into projector, watches it, goes super fucking crazy, and she goes, hey, Mary, come over here, help me move this projector.
Yeah.
And essentially kidnaps her there. And then they move to, we cut to a living room in town where Annie is now living with her addict boyfriend, who, his name is Joe, but in the character like headings on the dialogue, it keeps calling him boyfriend.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's like his name is Joe, and then like after that one scene, it's suddenly like Annie's boyfriend's car.
Yeah, it's so strange. And so she's there, and we get this idea that she's not doing well because, you know, in 1980, the Olympics were boycotted because they were in Moscow. And then when she lost that, she tried to commit suicide. And I'm guessing she's done some drugs, too, because she's with her addict boyfriend. And it's like all this really dark, bleak character shit, which means sweet fuck all because it happened off camera.
Yeah, and it doesn't really affect what she does in the rest of this script either. Then she's not at the Olympics.
Yeah, like the only thing that affects is the fact that she has to push herself to swim again, and even that's minor.
Yeah,
it gets overshadowed by all this other stuff going on. And so she gets a call from Mary, who sounds like she's in distress, and then gets cut off. And she goes, hey, boyfriend, because that's what we're going to call him. I need you to drive me to the lake, and hey, the counselors probably have drugs. He's like, okay.
Yeah, because doesn't he turn her down for it? He's like, nah, screw that. And
he's like, I don't want to fucking go anywhere. I want to stay home. I'm just imagining that. Have you seen Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
That freaking meth head couple that steals the ATM. I'm just imagining it being them. There's just the ATM just sitting there, and he's like, no, I'm going to crack this thing open. That actually happened near where I lived recently. Someone tried to steal an ATM out of a pharmacy.
Oh my god.
But no. But no, she convinces him to drive him there, and I'm like, I don't care about this character development stuff because it's off camera. We don't. Well, okay, at least we get an idea of what turns Mary into this person. What turns Annie into this person. Mary is just a completely different person for no reason.
Yeah, she might as well just be a new character or a new set of characters.
Yeah, so we cut back to the camp looking at, and we got Becky looking around for Mary. And I should mention there's this whole group of counselors partying whom I can barely remember their names either. They're completely interchangeable.
Yeah.
We got Tommy, Roy, Holly, I think is the slutty one. There's Kiara, who doesn't do anything. And then blah, and then blah, and then blah.
Yeah.
And they're not even having that great of a party, if I'm being honest, because when we cut back there, they're like, I'll talk about that later, but whatever. And so she runs into Pamela and she says, oh, Mary was helping me. And then Pamela moves in for the kill. And then one of the other counselors shows up and she kills them. And then Becky's running away from her. And then we see Annie's boyfriend's car driving up. And then Pamela's just like, roar, GTA or Burnout, and just drives into the car and makes it crash. And then she gets this, Becky runs off into the woods, and we don't see her again until like the 2/3 mark.
Oh God, yeah.
Which isn't that far, because this script moves ridiculously fast because it's got to cram so much shit in.
Yeah.
And okay, so Pamela takes Annie and her boyfriend out of the car because it's mentioned earlier that the car was found and no bodies, and we never find out what happened to the boyfriend. I don't think.
No, I don't think we do.
Like, he just disappears, and then Annie wakes up. She's tied to the couch in Pamela's living room while the film is playing, and these characters are interchangeable. Mary is standing on a stool with a noose around her neck. Now, this scene feels very much like it could have been a scene in Prisoners, just the tone of it. And the fact that it's a suspense scene. And here we get more exposition, it gets even weirder.
Oh, God, it does, doesn't it?
And she talks about how Elias said Jason was evil and tried to kill him in the womb, but failed, and the doctor said he wouldn't live, but he did. So they're implying something supernatural again. And then I'm guessing that's meant to imply that he caused the deformity, which is why Jason can't talk. He fucked up his face.
Yeah, that's what I got from it.
Yeah, and so and Pamela's about to go in for the kill, and then Victor comes knocking at the door, wanting to speak to Elias, assuming he's the one behind everything. And he's trying to walk, and Pamela almost gets him to leave, but then Annie kicks the projector over, and then Pamela just goes, "Hey, Victor," and then kills him.
Yeah.
Kills him with a machete. She basically does the, "Hey, your shoes are untied" thing.
Yeah.
And so Annie manages to get off the couch. She breaks the leg she's tied to, and this is a fairly decent scene.
Yeah.
Fairly suspenseful, and she's trying to hold the door shut to keep Pamela out, but then Mary slips, and so Annie has to grab Mary, and Mary manages to slip her head out of the noose. And they throw shit at Pamela to get her to go away.
Yeah.
And then they crash through the window like they're fucking Steven Seagal or something.
Yes.
And they run away, and they see there's a ranger boat docked behind the house, because apparently they can't walk to the camp that's within walking distance.
Yeah, that'd just be a crazy idea, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And so they go to the boat, and they're like, "Oh no, the boat's locked."
There's a thing about locks in these two.
Yeah, and so they're like getting away, and like Mary's in the boat, and like they have to like jump into the lake to avoid it, and Annie's like, "I can't swim, I can't do that anymore. It's not my life." It's like, and Mary's like, "But you have to." And she's like, "Okay," and so she swims, and so they swim for the sandbar in the lake, and I didn't even know lakes could have sandbars.
Nah, I was trying to picture the sand. It'd be like a big pile of sand, right? Like almost an island in the lake. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what it is like in the ocean. It's like the sand will like pile up away from the shore and sometimes stick over the water. Like I didn't know that was a thing in lakes.
No, I don't think it really is it?
I don't know. But
in Crystal Lake, like, apparently it is.
But they swim away, and Pamela's like, "Well, I can't swim, so I'm gonna have to get the boat." So she goes, hacks open the nearby utility shed, goes to get the keys, and then her eye gets caught by a trident. And she goes, and she decides, hey, I'm going to use this now. And so she goes to the machete and the trident, gets in the boat. And they're hiding behind the sandbar, but they know it's not going to work when she comes back around. So they decide to swim for Big Brick, the island, which is a weird name for an island.
It is.
And then they swim, and Pamela's coming after them with the boat, and Annie just straight up disappears into thin air for this next part.
Yeah. I thought she must have been killed or something at first, because I was just like, oh, she's gone.
Yeah, she's just gone, and then like Pamela's like catches Mary's hand with the trident. Okay, she's waving a trident around. I'm just going like, there were horses and a man on fire, and I killed a guy with a trident.
Yeah,
she's Steve Carell now.
She said loud noises.
Yes, and she drives the boat up to Big Brick and is like dragging, because there's apparently a rope attached to the trident. She's like trying to drag Mary into the shore. Like Mary just yanks her hand off the trident barb, which admittedly is kind of an ugh moment. And then Annie surfaces on the island, so apparently she swam underwater. And she runs over to where Pamela is and starts fighting her. And she gets the machete away from her after it gets embedded in the boat. So it's a trident versus machete fight. And it eventually ends with Pamela gets her head chopped off.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Like going back and having Pamela have her head chopped off.
And she's like floating in the lake, and they go like, okay, it's over. And they take the boat back to camp. And then we see it's Jason. He wades into the lake and takes Pamela's head in his hands. He's got like gnarly hands or something. It's like, oh no, Jason is here now. And so they get back to camp and they decide to go looking for an like the phone's been disconnected, but there's an emergency line in the cafeteria. And then like the guy who has like a bag full of shrooms is like listening to Eruption on the floating deck, or it's like a high dive. He's like sitting up on the high dive.
Oh yeah.
And he's listening to Eruption, and Jason comes out and crushes his head. And you don't see Jason. They're like, I don't care who are these people? We've barely seen them.
Yeah.
And you don't see Jason yet, but then Annie and Mary walk into the cafeteria where this great party is going on, where they're in their underwear and they're smothering their torsos with alcohol and then sliding down the cafeteria table and landing on a mattress. Does anyone actually do that?
No, this is the first time I heard of it. It's like, does alcohol really like lube you up that much to slide down a table?
Yeah, I don't get it.
I just imagine you get halfway and it just goes, you just rubbed all your skin off.
Yeah, like you got tons of splinters.
Yeah, that'd be the worst.
And then, okay, Annie and Mary get into the cafeteria and they tell the counselors about what happened, but the phone was smashed by Pamela, apparently. And Becky's wandering around in the woods, and she finds the guy's corpse on top of the high dive. She realizes something's going on. So she sees Jason watching her, and then she runs for the cafeteria, and she's like, there's this weird guy out there. And then he bursts into the cafeteria like the Kool-Aid Man. And this is your first full shot of Jason, and he just starts killing people. He knocks down the fat dude. He kills one of the girl counselors. He kills one other person. I forget how many there are.
I don't know. I lost track as well.
That's how literally faceless they are. Like, there were a lot of characters in the Antarctica draft, but they were reasonably distinct. These guys are just all the same.
Yeah.
Except some have dicks, some don't.
Yeah, they pretty much just have like kill numbers on their faces.
Yeah. Like, okay, so a bunch of them flee, and they hide in the equipment shed, and then like, oh crap, we need the car keys. So Annie's like, I'm going to go to the cafeteria and get the keys. And it's like, who has? It's like, Roy. Is like, which one's Roy? He's like, oh, he was fat. Not in a disrespectful way, he wore it well, but yeah, he was fat. And I'm like, ha ha ha, I get it. It's like, yeah, this character is interchangeable. We have to make sure you know which one he is. And so she's wading around in the dead guy's pockets looking for the keys and eventually finds them.
Yeah.
And then she fuck, what was I gonna say? But yeah, she goes to look for the truck. She sees Jason standing by the truck doing something to it. And then And then she goes and she hides somewhere, and there's like this whole thing where he's like like the activities cabin, and she's like hiding behind dolls, and I'm like, why are there dolls hanging up in this place?
Yeah.
Other than the fact that we need creepy puppets for some reason. Is Charles Band involved in this production? But then like he's about to get her. I forget exactly what happens, but then he like gets distracted by something. I forget exactly what happens here, but it's not important. Basically, he leaves, and then she gets out, and she finds that the car has been set on fire, so they can't leave in it.
Yeah. I actually thought they were going to turn up like bits of the engine would be missing or something, you know, like he ripped it apart, but then it's just like flaming inferno. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then he like bursts into, and he goes to the equipment shed, and there's like a bow in there because they don't do rifles anymore. And this guy's like, "Hey, I'm a good archer," and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah. But does he even get to fire a shot?
No, I don't think he does. I think he fires a shot. Well, he fires a shot into the door, and then it's like, oh crap, that might not have been the killer. And so they open the door, and then Jason kills him.
That's it.
And then one of the other people picks up the bow and shoots Jason, and then Annie, who was looking at one of the motorboats earlier, grabs the outboard motor off the boat and then like jams it into Jason's face. Part 6 reference. And so they so the survivors. It's 3 survivors. It's Annie. No, it's 4 survivors. Annie, Mary, Becky, and Tommy. They're like, oh, we're going to go around the lake, and we're going to go to Packanack, which is just past that fucking fire lookout tower. And there's like campsites for that place along the way, so we'll be able to find a radio. And so they're wandering through the woods, and they find an abandoned campsite where Jason killed everybody and left the radio there without batteries just to taunt them, because Jason knows the woods really well, apparently. And Becky just kind of randomly wanders off. And this is where it confirms that Jason has some sort of weird psychic abilities, because he like mind controls her and makes her hold Mary in place so that he can kill her. But then Mary like makes her move a bit, and then Becky gets the machete to the neck, and then it's a tent. It's like a big tent peg.
Yeah,
gets it to the neck and then bleeds out and dies. It's like, oh, so sad. I don't care. But so why doesn't Jason do this at any other point?
Yeah, that's
he never does it before. Never does it again.
Yeah, this explains so much like the psychic link, because I did not get that reading this, and I was just like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, and like, okay, so this has to take back to whether Jason drowned or not, which just never specifies, because it's implied that he did, but then we see the film in Pamela's living room, and it's just described as like a weird colored shape sinking in the lake, and we just assume that's Jason for some reason. But then it's assumed later on that Jason didn't die, he was just on the island, and that his mother's death is what gave him the bravery to finally swim the lake.
Yeah.
And we get even more of that in a minute, so okay. Becky dies. So sad, I don't care. And they're wandering through the woods, and they get to the fire lookout tower, and they bust into the utility shed, and there's Elias's dead body in there.
Yeah.
And they get an axe out, and Tommy's like, oh, I'm going to wait down here. I don't want to go up in the tower because I'm afraid of heights. If he comes down here, I can run. And, of course, that doesn't work out for him.
No, I do kind of like the idea. It's like, he's so scared of heights that I'll take my chances with the killer. It's like, really, dude?
You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're in the tower. They find Elias's mask and, like, his uniform and stuff. And by the way, they do get a message. They do send a message out over the CB radio in there. And he's like, they find his journal, which starts off with him being happy about Pamela's pregnancy. And then suddenly he's like, this is a mistake. He must die before he's born.
Yeah.
And then there's like poorly drawn maps that don't make sense. It's like, why did he suddenly decide that Jason was evil? Did Jason have the X gene or something? Like,
yeah.
What is going on?
It's like they had this idea and we're like, oh, we'll flesh it out at some point. and didn't,
It's like,
I guess.
they can't make up their mind whether Jason is supernatural or not. They can't make up their minds what's going on with Elias. And it's mentioned in his journal that during the pregnancy, apparently the Itsy Bitsy Spider song makes him kick.
Yeah.
Makes the baby kick. And I'm like, so is it implied that when he was humming Itsy Bitsy while he was killing those teenagers, was he being controlled by Jason at that point? Because if that's the case, the whole thing about making Jason sympathetic doesn't work.
Yeah. There's a lot that doesn't work here, isn't it?
Like, what is going on?
I don't know. Because it seems like, yeah, if it's Jason's controlling everything, then everything we had of him as a kid and like feeling sorry for him, but it's all pointless. Hey.
Yeah, it feels like 3 different movies are piling up here, and none of them make sense in themselves, let alone together.
I almost kind of picture at this moment that the guy went in, he had 3 ideas for different scripts. It was like, here's one where Elias is the killer, here's one where we redo the Pamela story, and here's one for Jason. And then whoever he pitched it to went, great, put it together, write it. So, that's not what I meant. These are 3 different movies. But no, it's a good movie. Do it.
Yeah, it just feels like Elias is only a killer because they needed a body count early on. Like, this feels like his idea was, let's do this psychological bleak story about this mother who loses her child, but then the child comes back. And then, oh no, we need a body count. Elias. Like, I would like Elias not to be a serial killer if we ever see him, thank you.
Same, I think.
But okay, so okay, dumbass gets killed.
Yeah.
And then they notice he's not down below anymore because they have this mirror where they can look underneath it. And then they see Jason coming, and so Annie gets this idea to put on the mask and the forest ranger jacket, the park ranger jacket, because we're now referencing the sweater from part 2 again.
Yep.
And she stands there because Jason was afraid of his father. He's petrified and doesn't want to move. And then Mary's like, ew, that's creepy. Take it off. So she does.
It's keeping us alive, but I don't like it. Okay.
And then the radio blares up, and they manage to contact the authorities. But then Jason picks up the axe and starts hacking the supports away at the bottom of the tower.
Yeah.
Because we're back at this fucking tower again, and then the tower starts falling. And Annie holds on to Mary's arm, and then the tower falls over and gets propped on a tree about 15 feet above the ground, and then she can't hold on anymore, but then Mary falls. But because it's only 15 feet, she's mostly okay. And then Jason's about to come get her. By the way, he is wearing a hockey mask at this point. It was among the old hockey equipment that the locals left on the island.
That's it, yeah.
Which is what you're meant to assume, at least. And then he's about to get her, but then the cab falls the rest of the way and lands on him. And Jason pops back up again. I can't remember if he gets demasked or not.
I don't think he does.
Yeah, which is a weird choice.
Yeah.
Oh, and also, Pamela's bell was in the top of the tower for some reason. But then it lands, and Annie is pinned down but still alive, and she refuses to call out so that Mary will run away and not get herself killed. And Jason's like emerging from the cab and chasing after her, but then Annie notices Pamela's bell and rings it to bring Jason to her because, of course.
Yeah.
We had to pay that off.
Yeah.
And so Mary makes it to pack an act, and then she leads them to the wrecked tower with the authorities, and then Annie is just randomly dead, but the bell is gone. I'm not sure if Jason killed her or if she died of her wounds. So the less likable of the 2 bland protagonists is the one who lives.
Yeah. So I kind of got it that I assumed Jason killed her and took the bell for reasons that maybe he doesn't like being called anymore.
Yeah, I assume that.
But it doesn't say, does it?
Yeah, it does. It doesn't say. So Jason just gives up. And then it cuts to... He cuts to a big brick, and you see Jason. You can see Crystal Lake across. You see the camp across the lake, and then you see that Jason has strung Pamela's head up in a tree facing the camp, and the bell is on a nearby branch, and you hear a report on the radio skeptical of the third killer's existence, and then the wind blows and the bell rings next to Pamela's head, and then it's over.
Yeah. that
kind
happened.
of like that's a creepy image, but it's like that's a flat ending. Jason just gave up.
Yeah, yeah. It's that's probably the best way to describe most of the script is very flat.
Yeah, this whole thing is flat because it's like you have not one but two entirely interchangeable casts of characters who are either bland or unlikable. You have two leads, one of whom is unlikable, but then character develops off camera. One of whom is there, and they try to develop her, but there's not enough to her to really give a shit about. And so she's the more likable one, I guess, but she dies, and so you have to deal with Mary.
Yeah.
You have the lesbian relationship, which is supremely tacked on.
Mm.
You have Elias is a killer with all these mixed motivations, which are never explained or made sense in any way.
Yeah.
Pamela's part is okay, but it's rushed.
Yeah. But clearly that needed a movie to do.
And Jason might as well be a Marvel Cinematic Universe little stinger at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, he might as well just be cut to credits. Jason emerges from the lake.
Yeah, basically, pretty much. It's just like...
So yeah, that's not very good, but it got closer to being made than the last one did.
Really?
Yeah, because they signed on Breck Eisner, who did the Crazies remake.
All right.
And he did a few other films. And he was supposed to do the Creature from the Black Lagoon remake. I've read his revision of that script. It's awful.
Oh no.
And he's like he wanted to cast Bette Midler as supposedly as Pamela, and he wanted to class it up and have no sex.
Okay.
and it was all they had done location scouting, and they were a month away from filming when Paramount axed it because apparently. Now, supposedly the reason they canceled it is because Rings was one of their horror movies and it was a massive bomb. Deservedly so, because that movie was a horrendous piece of shit.
Yeah, I saw that. It's weird because it delves into mythology, which I love, but it was so boring.
It was so boring, and because they decided to make the connection to The Ring 2 vague.
Oh, yeah.
It just didn't make any sense, and it was all stupid and boring. And I was sitting there in the theater going, why the that was somewhat helped by the fact that I went straight down the hall to watch John Wick 2 right after.
Ah, good choice.
Yeah. But no, but I think Paramount was having second thoughts about this script from the beginning. Like, I don't think they were ever behind this reboot as much as they claimed they were.
Oh, yeah.
So they're a month out and they say, nope, we're not doing it anymore. So it was supposed to come out Friday, but it's not.
Wow.
Or today, if you're listening to this on Friday. Yeah, we're rigging in Friday the 13th with a movie that was supposed to come out today.
So crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, so that got canceled, and it seems like, and because Paramount's deal expires in 2018, it's looking like we won't get another one.
No, yeah.
And then recently, there was a new rumor online that New Line is going to look to do another movie after they get the rights back because they're flush with the It cash. And horror is profitable again now that they're probably going to make one themselves.
Okay, well, I'd like to see Jason come back at some point.
I don't know. I mean, New Line doesn't have a great track record.
That is true.
Jason Goes to Hell, watchable but not a good Jason movie. Jason X sucked. Freddy vs. Jason, okay. Remake sucked.
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah. I don't know if New Line knows what. Maybe they can get someone. Maybe they go like, hey, Antoska, do another version.
So that could work.
And what kind of sucked about this is that in one of the years when they could have gotten the movie released, the Friday the 13th came in June, which is Jason's birthday, June 13th.
That would have been perfect.
I can't believe this thing got this close to being filmed. Like,
that's nuts. Especially after turning down the other script.
Which actually would have worked if they just condensed it a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically this. We're in this weird limbo where maybe New Line will make a movie, but for the time being, the video game is carrying the torch.
Yeah.
Which is a supremely weird just concept.
Yeah, like the movie series, and it's like can't seem to get itself together to carry it on. So these
It's like,
video game guys who are fans are just carrying the torch on for us.
and I mean, even with the glitches, it's better than this script. Oh. But no, we're supposed to get the part 4 map Friday, along with a new counselor who is the stoner from part 3.
Ah, cool.
Well, it's probably a generic character based on him, but yeah, basically you'll be able to play as Tommy Chong on Friday.
And you should all do it, because I can't.
Yeah, I'll do it. I have like $20 on my PSN account. I can probably buy it.
Ah, sweet.
But yeah, that was the weird and black comedy history of the Friday the 13th reboot that never was and never will be.
Yeah.
Because I remember this Guzikowski thing, like people were at, because this guy did Prisoners, this should be interesting, and then details kind of started coming out like around the time like the project was canceled, and they're like, well, first off we heard, oh, it's going to be a prequel, and people were like, we don't know about that. And then like someone put a summary of the script online, give the basic idea, and it's like, wow, that sounds kind of stupid. Do you read the script? It's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the bizarre and recently dead. Like we basically just autopsied this project.
We dug it up and stuck a stick in it, and maybe some lightning will bring some new life.
Yep. Oh, that what in the video game when you come back as Tommy Jarvis, one of the things he'll say is, "Jason's alive. I dug up his body. He's stronger than he was before." And Tom Matthews' voice acting is not good.
Excellent.
And what's funny is that he knows Jason is there, yet he still reacts to dead bodies. Like it's like, oh, a dead body. Is that a person?
Oh, no.
But yeah, so that's this episode, I guess. Remember to check out this show on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter, and if you have any questions, email us at screenplayarchaeology@outlook.com, tweet to me, and I swear I will try to respond to you, but it's just that's the one I tend to sign out of when I'm in my main one. And the Tumblr, there's going to be an iTunes link down below, a Stitcher Radio link down below. If you got any requests, ask away, because I'm fulfilling the first request I ever got in December. So,
ooh.
Yes. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And until next time, which might be the Punisher.
Ooh.
Yeah, that should be fun. Until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.